We at EVRN wish to inform listeners that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this interview belong solely to the particular speakers and not necessarily to any of the owners, agents, employers, or employees of Eclectic Vibrations Radio Network. EVRN maintains that this interview and all content expressed on any of our or our affiliates' sites are compliant with all various and sundry statutes and legislation in Ireland, the European Union, and international legal bodies. All programming is solely for entertainment and educational value. So, Pat, you ran for office with the immigration control platform. You have been quite active for a number of years in the early 2000s. You're still active with certain more nationalist conservative groups on a, would you say, an activist basis?
Well, first of all, I'm still running. but no, I say this. I might be a member of the Nationalist Party, but I take no activity in it as such. I ran 3 times for ICP, and I was the chairman of ICP. That's where my background is with regards things. The reason why I don't take an active part with NP is because I take a different path, a different viewpoint to a lot of things. And I think that that party, being basically really the only nationalist party in Ireland, should be allowed off and do its own things without me sort of hindering them in any way or so, with my background and so forth, and with what I say.
Fair enough. What we primarily wanted you on here to speak about is your unique view, and I would say that it's unique, it's very rare, of where we are as a nation. Our show seems to be primarily about getting down to the root of what is the sickness in our society, who are our enemies that are pulling the strings to lead us further down this dark path. And you tell me that the people that are getting the brunt of the shit in this country are the working people. So who is the enemy of the working man, the ordinary Irish person who's just trying to get by?
Well, first of all, you might immediately say the government. It taxes them to the hilt.
Naturally.
And then the so-called ones who are supposed to stand up, shall we say, for the downtrodden, we'd say supposedly the working person. Now, I say the working person, that comes across any class, right? If I may use that term. But we say Sinn Féin, people before profit, those arsehole independents and so forth like that, spouting off all the time, But you never heard them talking about basically the working person. They bout off all the time about welfare, hospitalisation, medical cards, housing, all the same crap, but never about the working person. And that really gets up my nose in this country, because it's the working person that should be looked after, the productive, not the bloody unproductive. I mean, you get in leaflets. I got in leaflets there the other day from, she's a senator now, failed politician, Ireland, councillor, then don't get into the dogs, so we'll make you a shamateur, which is another waste of space, and how I go on about that kid too. But, and it's all about welfare, what you can claim, this, that, and the other, and how they're going to spend our money, which we don't have because we're so much in debt. Another thing that people don't talk about, But who's going to pay for it all? The working man and woman, and in betweeny. That's me being a liberal. I shouldn't use the term liberal, PC actually, not liberal. There were some great liberal people in their time. PC, as I call them. So there's where I stand on that issue. It's the working people, and that's the people I really want to look after in this country. And by the way, when I as you know this now too, welfare class, as I said, they will have to be left aside. That's my thinking.
We hear a lot from different people across the board, actually. It's always complaints of, well, we need to fund the hospitals better, we need to fund this better, fund that better. So I can definitely see how you might not feel like the working man is getting a good shake, because it seems it's all about how much money can we throw at something, as if that's some kind of broad solution. Morgan, our co-host, is with us here. Do you want to pipe in or make yourself known?
If he with us in body, not mind, what's the story?
Oh no, I just if everybody's talking, nobody's listening, Pat. So I don't know much. I don't know much about your past. So I'm listening intently. So you mentioned about the welfare class being left to the side. So what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, you see, this seems to be a radical idea somehow or another, if I get the impression listening to you, yeah? But you must remember, as I just said there, I got that leaflet in, and it's all about welfare and so forth like this. We have to wake up to the fact one day that we can't keep paying welfare, especially with open borders. We just can't. We can't afford it. Right? Now, I said, well, no, hang on now, come on. Wow.
Well, you're giving that impression, Pat.
No, let's not get carried away. Of course you look after people. Jeepers sake. Of course you do. You know, especially people who fall in hard times through no fault of their own or so forth like that. But I'm talking about, I mean, when I go into town and I see big cars outside, these brand new houses that we built for people and all that, yeah. And then I see people struggling to pay mortgages. Then I see a council that says 30% of of housing must be for social welfare. Now, you're after breaking your butt to try and get a mortgage. And you wake up the next day after going into your new house, and either a landlord or council is after buying the house next door. And first thing...
Have we lost Pat?
I can't hear.
Right, probably the same situation I'm in, rural internet.
You see, is tries to get on a lot. We've lost it in this country, lost completely. And if that sounds radical to people, then it shows how bad things have gone in Ireland.
Now, Pat, we lost about... go on.
No, I was just going to say the same thing, sir. I lost you there for about the last kind of minute.
Oh, you stopped listening, did you?
No, there's an issue with the connection, so you cut out at.
Great! So you missed that rant, did you?
Yeah, don't worry. I'm more than familiar with rantings. Yeah.
Oh God Almighty! You know what?
So where I got to, you were talking about basically people who had worked hard to get a mortgage, and basically they look at people who basically probably have never worked or are in receipt of welfare payments, and they're probably in a much better financial position than somebody who will work, day in, day out, has a mortgage, struggles. So I think that's kind of where
we lost you.
I lost contact with with the connection there.
Yeah, well, that's a pity. Like, you don't expect me to go back at that, do you?
No. Oh, geez. Rural internet is a major problem in this country.
Oh, don't start me on ye lockdown in the country or rural things, like, Good God. Always bloody moaning.
Okay, there we go. Another pet peeve of Pat's, the rural people. We're dragging the country down?
No, I wouldn't have. Now, you don't start now with that bloody thing. I'm not saying that. I know rural Ireland and I know city Ireland. I was born in a part just on the outskirts of Dublin with cattle roaming around the place. And my grandparents and parents were from the countryside, so I know rural Ireland too. But unfortunately about rural Ireland, they've lost their independence. When I was growing up, small town Ireland had its own abattoir, bakeries, creamery, everything like that, right? So it was independent of central government. What you do basically, and I used to go down on it as a child on the big truck, the supply truck, each week or whatever like that. My brothers and sisters would too. Great crack, going 30 miles an hour down the N3, if you can see it. But in any case, and we get there eventually. But great, and that was the supply truck. And rural Ireland was different. It was completely, it wasn't cut off so much, and it was better off being cut off, right? But that was rural Ireland. And now it's a dependency of central government. You know, fair day is gone. You know, the butchers get their meat from where? They don't slaughter it themselves. The abattoir is gone. The creamery is gone. The little creamery we used to go to. I remember my grandmother's drawn water from the well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember lighting the eye lamps. You know, I remember a fair day. So about rural Ireland and all that, no, I know a bit about it. You know, I mean, so all my folks would have come from the country. And just as much as I know about Dublin City, I know the cattle market and the cattle being hired down Knockland Street and so forth like that. And I know places there that it was all country people and all who used to live around these areas. You know, so no, but I'm trying to get people to start thinking. You know, and maybe I have to stand on toes and be, you know, say things that I'm not supposed to, but I'm trying to get people to think. We've done ourselves. We have a beautiful countryside. We had some lovely towns. And by the way, I don't call them villages. I never heard the term village when I was growing up. It was called a town. So we're even losing globalism in even the way we speak, you know, and who we are and what we are. So when I talk about even country, I mean Dublin. To go into the centre city of Dublin now, I don't go in, and I know people won't go in anymore. It's not Dublin City anymore. They destroyed it. You know, you look at O'Connell Street. What was wrong with O'Connell Street? It was an Irish street, but they had to go and Europeanise it. You know, I looked at an old picture of Dublin City today, 1960s, and it looked far more classy than the kip that it is now. You know, and why do we do these things? I mean, you go to Dublin City now, even without this COVID nonsense, right? But don't get me started on that now, right? But there's no seating, there's no public toilets, there's no bloody litter bins. Why? Because we step back from law and order. We've let the minorities of anything take over our city and our countryside. You know? And maybe, I don't know why people aren't talking about this. And maybe I seem strange because I'm a voice in the wilderness or something like that. But look around you. You see, possibly younger people than I don't understand that I can see what we had on both sides, on rural and, we say, cosmopolitan. Yeah? But I can see what we had. I can see that my parents could go window shopping in the night time. Now it's all shuttered and empty. We 5 stories building in O'Connell Street with nobody living in them. And yet we're building these co-living apartment blocks and everything like that. You know, there's something wrong. I mean, do we want to live in city? Or are we going to keep giving builders and landowners money so that we build these vast humorless estates on the outskirts of Dublin? And that's what we're going to do. Unless people start saying, no, you know, go into Dublin now and try and find a bloody Jacks, especially with this COVID. Or sorry, maybe with a refined audience, a Jacks isn't the appropriate term, is it? You know?
Oh no, I think everyone still knows what a Jacks is.
No, I mean, oh no, sorry, I thought you might call them a loo, you know. That's you know. They call it what we. I mean, we're even losing Irish terms. I mean, we have to start thinking what we're losing. We're just becoming a bland, globalist, eunuch. Now that's EUUCH. EUNUCH, by the way. I was corrected on that, so I was by somebody a good while back. City and country. I remember going to Galway City, and just they were completely different to Dublin. Cork was too, besides their accent, you know, and going on about the rebel county me arse. No, but you know, completely different. And now they're all the same, bland.
Oh yeah.
Wearing, wearing the same clothes, same outlook. You know, it's sad. So bloody sad. I heard a song by Luke Kelly last night, and it was on some show, but it was this crowd down in Clare with their banjos and everything like that, and you won Sharon Shannon baiting it out, yeah. They couldn't go near Luke Kelly's version. Yeah.
No.
But you won't find it. Where's Luke Kelly types now in Dublin? They're not there. They're all that arsehole, Egypt, Hosier, or whatever you wish to call it. For fuck's sake, come on. That's not Dublin. Dublin, you used to have drunken bums of fucking poets and singers and all roaming around the place. What you get now?
Yep. Hmm.
You know?
It looks like anywhere in Europe.
Yeah.
It really does. I'm sorry to say.
Hang on there before you get carried away there. Now, hang on. There's other cities that have a bit of respect for themselves and kept what they had. We went in complete. I remember, lads, you wouldn't remember this, but when we had trees in Dublin city centre in O'Connell Street, the starlings used to come home in the evening to roost. It was a sight to behold.
Mm-hmm.
Now what have we?
It all just happened so fast, Pat. It's kind of hard to tell what happened. I mean, what we're talking just under 20 years of a radical transformation, just instant, really, for me anyway, in my lifetime, in my memory.
Maybe so, but what I'm trying to say to you is that, and I can see where you're coming from, but this started really I would say, now you could go back if you think about it. Did the rot really set in Ireland in the 60s when we started getting a few bob in? If you think about it, you know? Did it start?
Sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know if it was so much money. I think if you look at the 60s, there's a culture change, especially in the States. And our culture today is, to my mind, it's essentially the culture of the United States of America. It's pop culture, it's modern pop culture, especially with the invention of the internet. Everybody's connected. And I would be of the mind that there's definitely negative changes that happened, but it wouldn't be wholly negative changes. We could rake through the fucking horrors of what it was like to live in 60s Ireland as well, depending on where you came from. If you came from a working class background, people.
I interrupt you there. Can you not say the same about today?
Of course you can. You can say it about any time at all.
So why are we going back? A lot of those people aren't alive, just like this mothers and babies home around now to defend themselves, right? And if you notice, it's always these socialists and Reds who berate these people because they're not around to defend themselves, right? And what have they contributed to society? Look at that.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Pat, because we have a lot of instances now of, say, children being abused in this country.
Yes.
by different organizations.
Yes.
And we have the organs of aborted fetuses, aborted babies being traded. How is that different from any of the objections being brought up about mother and baby homes? I'm struggling. I really want someone to explain that one to me.
You see, now you're putting your finger on it, you see. Just now, we're all getting there, you see, because you think outside the box. You don't go with the flow, you see. The thing is, this is the pure and utter hypocrisy of Ireland now is nauseating, especially amongst these Reds and the government and the mediocre. Now, by the way, lads, I mightn't be around, right? I hope I will be, but I mightn't be around. Well, we'd say, now I prefer to see an evolution, right? People think, but that's not going to happen in Ireland. They're too stupid, right? But when the revolution comes now, and I won't be around because unfortunately it's going to be the young people, right? That when you have the gallows set up, do it for me, Put the mediocre up there first. Do it remember Pat, or Pod Bomb. And I know a couple of names I could throw it to you from, we'll say 2000, but I won't, right? Not just, and they're still there. They're still there. noxious people, liars, thieves of truth. You must remember this, lads. And I was with ICP. What was his name? Dooley. He was the head fictional wizard of the NUJ, yeah? He came out and he said that the NUJ, now this was Maggie Thatcher's words though, so it showed how...
NUJ?
Yeah,
Sorry.
the National Union of Journalists. Yeah, he came out and said, Dooley was his name, and he came out and said that the ICP should not be given the oxygen of publicity, right? Now this is a so-called journalist. Now, he took the words out of Maggie Thatcher's mouth, because they're all West Brits in journalism in any case, right? If I may put it that way, right? So he had no problem taking her words and using them against an Irish group that was just pointing out what was going on in Ireland. That's all we were doing, right? We weren't causing trouble or anything like that. We ran in elections and so forth like that. But that's what they were up to then. And that was back in 2000.
Same. But just against different groups now, today, we have this. Or just against the people in general. Was it 2 years ago that the media just attacked the people of Balbriggan when they protested their local Garda station over gang violence? I think it was 2 years ago. Just the same kind of looking down on, admonishment. This is a foreign entity, basically.
What's a foreign entity?
Sorry, the media itself.
Well, you see,
the so-called Irish media.
No, mediocre. Sorry, get it correct. Mediocre, okay. Right? No, I'm going to say this to you. I know Balbriggan. Well, I did, yeah. Lovely. You think about Dublin. We could have a lovely city, the Naples of Europe, shall we say, bar the weather, and lovely little sea towns and everything like that. And Balbriggan was a nice little sea town and all that, right? Skerries, all go up the life. Why are they putting all these people on the north of Dublin? Nobody's, you see, let's go back to the hypocrisy again, lads, of these socialists, right? These reds under the beds, the shinners. And by the way, I'm not letting Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael off the hook. They're the ones who were there. Nora Owen in 98, she was the Minister for Justice when all the Nigerians started coming into this country, right? And then Fine Gael got in, or Fianna Fáil, sorry, Bertie Ahern, the great Bertie, who I met on my doorstep when I lived in Stony Batter. Yeah? And I can tell you, Bertie, good God, but this just didn't happen yesterday. Balbriggan, I seen it, and I could see it happening. Yeah? And I noticed there was white flight out of there, and people got out of there, and the media or so forth wouldn't do anything about it. And now they're living up there, the blacks. And I'm going to say this to you now, lads, and you can cut me off or do what you like. But the Nigerian ambassador to Ireland told the government at the time, these were not the people to be coming into this country, his own country folk, right? Now, also, some of our missionaries told the government not to be taking them in. And I remember coming out of an ICP meeting in Denmark Street, and this would have been in the 90s. No, not the 90s, sorry, lads, in the early 2000s. And I seen these, good sweet suffering mother of God when I think about it, yeah. These four blacks waddling up the street pushing prams, and the in line across the street. And I tell you this, you wouldn't come across more ugly or obese people, yeah. And this was in early 2000, right? And there was a foreign man. Right. He could have been Italian or French, but he started giving them loads, yeah, because he knew what was going on in his country. We didn't. And I stopped the man and I says, fair balls. And he says, I don't want this happening in your country. And I was coming out of an ICP meeting. So there you go. That was the early 90s. And don't tell me that Paddy didn't have an idea what was going to happen. He'd been in Britain. He'd been in France. He'd been in Spain. So
then where did the disconnect happen? Because very few Irish people that I meet even can conceive that this might be a problem. Even in 2020, it's still, now we shouldn't be talking about that. These are people that need our help.
The only help I'd give them is the ferry into international waters, yeah? And I'd have a fucking submarine lurking right? Let me put that to you. Because they've thieved billions of pounds off the working men and women in this country, which we could have given to worthy causes like scoliosis children, right? So I make no moral thing about this. I know what I do with them. So the morality
You're
of
not
this,
beating around the bush.
well, hang on, lads. What's this about beating around the bush? It's 20 years, lads. Look at the country already in 20 years. What's it going to be like in another 20? Where are we going to get the money for it all? I mean,
would you see us collapsing into a third world country, Pat, shortly?
I don't know about a third world country, and I don't know about collapsing into it, right? You could say in ways that we are sort of a third world country because we're so dependent. See, now that we've got such a huge debt, right? And you can go into usury, or as I call it, usury, but that's another subject, another time, right? Now, but you can go into that, right? Or you can go into how much we spend on social bloody welfare again. It's enormous. I forget what it is, part of the budget. But you see any politician getting elected now, and he puts out his leaflet, and it's telling you what you can get. Well, it's not telling the poor old sap who's working for minimum wage what he can get, or she can get, or in between he can get. I have to say that now because I'm very moderate, you know.
Okay. Pat.
Yes.
I'm trying to look to the future, especially where jobs are concerned. All the technology that's coming down the line is essentially it's automation. So even I work in part of my job is finance. So I even look at finance. 5 years into the future, all that 90% of it's going to be essentially farmed out to computer programs. All the manufacturing jobs that were in this country that I've seen are almost gone. Anything that's left will probably be automated as well. So I have a kind of pessimistic view of jobs for people in the future, especially the average bloke on the street. Everything's nearly automated at this stage, even mechanics. You probably need a computer degree just to figure out what's going on with a car these days. So the future will probably look like that more people are going to be on the welfare, if not the welfare as it is now, that's some sort of universal basic income. And I think that's coming down the road. It's been muted and the idea has been put out there for the last couple of years. But I think this whole COVID situation is probably the launching point for that. Can you see something like that where basically lots of people are essentially going to be captives of the state? If traditional employment is essentially gone?
Well, first of all, if you think about it this way, despite all the government's blather, we still have young people leaving this country, right? So let's put that aside. You know, they all go back about the 50s and all, and people live in the country. There still are young people leaving this country, and I wouldn't blame them. If I was young, I'd get the feck out of this country too, right? But apart from that, I think you're quite correct. Now, you knew this, and I knew this for the past 10, 20 years. Automation was coming. Why wasn't government prepared for all this? You know, but it didn't. So what it's going to do is we're going to rush headlong into this thing, which should have been prepared for, but they didn't. And yet people accept this. You know, I agree with you. I agree fully with you. Everything's going to be automated. Most jobs will be. Sure, they're even thinking of drones for Amazon and so forth like that, dropping off your packets and all that. You know, so I don't know what to say. It's the young people especially. Now, they're being indoctrinated right from they go into kindergarten now, young kids, right? So their viewpoint would be, especially when you're in your 20s or so, you should be allowed to get on with your life and enjoy it, you know? I mean, when I look back on my life, the people I blame for Ireland going into this crap would be the people now in the, shall we say, 50s, 60s, 70s onwards, right? I do believe that you really haven't grown up until you're past 30, you know, as regards voting and so.
Yeah, I agree too.
So, I mean, you've nailed it there, and I don't know what to say about that. It's coming, it's here.
Yeah.
And
it is here.
Yeah, it's here. Of course, it's here. And when people wake up after this COVID bloody nonsense, right? When they wake up, if it's ever over, by the way, what are we going to do? Here's a point for you now, right? During the emergency, there's a railway bridge down near me, right? I've known it since I was a child. We even went down the longest tunnel in Ireland there. I went halfway through it. I was brave, like, you know. I wasn't brave half the time, though. But in any case, there's an embankment there. And when I was a kid, there was still the gardens from the emergency there, where people grew vegetables and so forth like this. And a great plant altogether. What's it called? Rhubarb. Great for iodine and so forth like that, right? And if you go to old houses, you might still see those rhubarb patches still in houses, right? But now, during this so-called pandemic, why aren't we trying to make out that we're going to be self-sufficient if this is worldwide? You know? Remember, we're surrounded by water. Now, we got rid of Irish shipping. You wouldn't remember that, lads. I don't presume you would, right? So we basically have no shipping. This is the great thing that the government has been doing for ages. Now, and they sold off half of Aer Lingus, if you think about it. So where's all our independent shipping and airlines? So how are we going to get produce into this country if something really big did happen? If he says there was a third world war or something like that. You know where I'm coming from. Major, right? But that's why I don't believe this pandemic, because if it was and so dangerous, we'd have gardens on those embankments now. We'd have plots, people growing their own. That's why I don't believe in these arsehole Greens. They're a nonsense. Do you ever hear them thinking about having their own plots and gardens or so forth like that? Do you ever hear them talking about putting people back living in Dublin city centre or so? No. You know, and yes, here's another thing there. Are going to enjoy this, lads? No, I'll leave you ask me the next subject, because don't let me go on to bicycle lanes, right? I'll tell you why don't let me go on to bicycle lanes, will I? You know what scares me most about that?
Want one?
Bicycle was one of the greatest inventions ever made by man, right? It got anybody could travel once you had a bicycle, right? From the poorest to the richest on your own state, right? Now, if we keep going on the way we are with these, as I call them, cycle Stasi, right? The government is going to start taxing, right? Now, this is why I can't get the Stasi. I put up a thing on my Twitter today of Stony Batter down the road there, a picture. On the other side is a bus lane, right? And on one side is a cycle lane, and no traffic cars can park there. So what are the shops supposed to do? Now, so that means that I'm going to demand, as a motorist, that fella who's after stealing part of my road, right? And I'm paying road tax, which is not used to repair the roads. Obviously, some of them are. Yeah. So I'm going to demand that he pays cycle tax, right, for his laneway. Then I'm going to demand that he pays parking tax, right? Then I'm going to demand that he pays insurance. Do you see where I'm coming from?
That is definitely going to happen.
Now, that's what scares me. Yet you never hear these cyclists talking about this, because I want the cycle still to be free, if you see where I'm coming from. I look at it from a different aspect, but I never hear anybody talking about this. And have you noticed another thing there about Dublin too? They love putting up poles. Everywhere you go, I'd hate to be blind, but they poles everywhere. And then now they have cycle lanes now with these little things jutting up out of the street. And they're filthy. And if there was a riot, they'd make a great weapon. You know? I mean, there's visual rights even in this country are being abused. You know where I come from. You know? Now, that's why these cyclists really get up my nose. And the Phoenix Park, now I live beside the Phoenix Park, right? I've known it since I was a child. Yeah? And now they want to cut off all traffic nearly from it. They even want to stop, even, you know, that God love them. My heart goes out to commuters, by the way, right? From coming up the main avenue there. Now, think about that. Who are these people to stop taxpayers? Now, think about it, they're taxpayers.
Yep.
And yet nobody says anything about it. Do you know, go up, I tell you what, lads, go up the Centre Road, Chesterfield Avenue. We should have changed that name in any case, but that's another thing, you know. And by the way, lads, you do know that the Phoenix Park is Park Fionnaishke.
Yeah.
Yeah, you knew that. Oh, God, well, that's that lesson over for the nation in any case, you know. Fionnaishke means clear water, yeah? Not this Phoenix thing, which is an abuse of the term Fionnaishke. There's the history lesson. Oh, yeah, well, there you go, you see. Do you know that there's a dolmen up there, too?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there you go now. Yeah, well, look up me Twitter. You'll see it on it, right? Not that anybody does look at me Twitter anymore. They think I do eccentric, shall we say. But there's a dolmen up there, too, right? And I got a picture of it. I stuck it on my Twitter a while back. But you go through Chesterfield Avenue, the main road in the Phoenix Park. And on each side, now I took a picture of it and I meant to put it up on my Twitter, but I forgot about it because I think I'm in the bad books with cyclists enough in any case. But in any case, there's 3 lanes now on each side of Chesterfield Avenue for cyclists and pedestrians. 3 lanes on each side. Right? There you go. 3 lanes.
Yeah. It's strangling the city.
Yeah. What is?
Basically making roads useless for commuters. I mean, you're just jamming things up. What you're really doing is forcing people to abandon their cars altogether, as in just not have a car.
Yeah, and but who will be driving cars then? The rich, of course, and so forth, and the government ministers. Yeah, this is
Eamon
why I
Ryan,
have a deal. Yeah, this is, well, Eamon Ryan, look, you know, I wouldn't go into you know. But what I'm trying to say to you is, look, these 3 paths on each side of Chesterfield Avenue, and they blocked all the parking. There's cones now on the road, so you can't park on the whole road of Chesterfield Avenue, right? Now, so do you have a laneway on each side? Let's go with this, right? On each side now, I just didn't say on each side, for pedestrians, runners, and cyclists. Think about it. But the fellow who's paying tax is squeezed into one road in and one road out. And yet, he's the commuter, who was told by the government in the 90s to buy a house over in Navan or up in Cavan even or so forth like that, yeah?
Yeah, I think with the cars, there's freedom in being able to travel. You know, it's why it's a fundamental right to travel. If you take away the means of travel, well then you can't travel. There's that freedom gone.
You're taking away the right, yeah.
Yeah, by a sleight of hand, the right's still there, but the means to actually travel is gone.
There you go. And so that was part of the reason why, lads, it was Eamon Ryan who told us to buy diesel cars.
Yeah.
And diesel cars are a great car because they've got a much more torque than a petrol car, right? So they can pull far more. That's why farmers use them a lot and so forth like that, right? Now, a petrol car and so forth is a very good means of transport, right? Electric cars cost a fortune. Now, we won't go into the lithium and so forth like that, right? But before I finish with the Phoenix Park, lads, right? All the people now are parking in the local estates. Think about it. Where there's children playing and all this, right? Because of these lunatics, right? Now, I think the OPW has become a law unto itself, right? But besides that, guess when the last fatalities were in the Phoenix Park?
60s?
No, it was in 2000. Now, I can't tell you the date, yeah? It was a cyclist ran into a pedestrian or a jogger, one or the other.
Oh.
So it wasn't a car driver or anything like that. Right, there you go. That was a fatality, right? Lord loved him, right? May he rest in peace, right? It wasn't a car. You see, we touched on it at the start. It's the hypocrisy in this country, the blatant. It's in your face. It's in your face. The downright amoral, thieving, lying that's going on in this country, and we seem to accept it now.
Yeah, I think to a large extent people are demoralised. I think that's what essentially it's been for the last 20 or 30 years. just this series of demoralizations for people. Even going back, I'd like to ask you, Pat, when you would have saw immigration beginning in the 90s, was it were you free to talk about it, or were you browbeaten? Were you charged with being called a racist? Were you shut down when you tried to have a conversation, or is that something that followed later?
Good question, by the way, actually. Let me see, with the racist angle, I thought that was always nonsense in any case. Nonsense, right? It was just a throwaway thing. These people who are unthinking, but they try to throw things at you, right? And when we started off, now, from what I can recall, and my memory's not the best, right?
Okay, you're in good company.
No, it's like Lal and Hardy. Why did you join the Legion? I tried to forget what,
Sure.
But no, I love Lal and Hardy, by the way. But no, but when I started, now I met Anya, and I have great time for Anya O'Connell. Great time for that woman.
The founder and the chair of
and
ICP, right?
And she put her money, and she'd go into the darkest depths. She wasn't afraid of anything, and she put her money where her mouth was, right? But in any case, I met Anya in O'Connell Street in '98. I think it was '98. And God, Lord, there was this little woman handing out leaflets about immigration, right? So I took one, and I went off with me when I joined up, right? But we could never get people. It was always a struggle. And even when I left ICP and we tried to form another group, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And you see, here's the thing, lads. And I'll tell you one of the reasons. And I ran in Dublin Central, right? Now, we used to leaflet a lot right before elections. We put up our posters. I still have my posters up in the attic and so forth. A picture of Dorian Gray, by the way, right? But that's a bit of culture for the night, lads, just in case, But so don't say I didn't bring culture into this program. But in any case, we put up posters. We'd go and do our own leafleting, and some of the leaflets were very well produced and all this, right? Brilliant. And we told people, now this was about immigration, how it would affect Ireland, our housing, everything like that, right? Law and order, everything, right? And we done that. Now, we weren't going into anything else. We didn't beat the drum about the 6 counties or anything like that. It was purely immigration, right? Right? And then you must remember the post office dropped leaflets into every door in your constituency too, right? Every door.
Yep.
So there was no
pretty handy.
Yeah, there was no excuse. And I also would have my phone number. I'd have what you call it, got an email address or something like that on it. Yeah, very rarely got feedback. Very. And you know what I always put it down to? On Dina Bull. Remember the old myths of Ireland, the fair bull, the Feckwell, the Miletians, and all that. Well, we had on fair bull, the belly people, right? And we have on fair bull Newer in this country, right? They didn't think through their brains, because they thought through their bellies, right? And it was, would you get me daughter a house, me medical card, right? Now that's why I'm going back to welfare too, right? Because it's a ways and means of controlling people too, right? Now, and we were trying to point out to them what effect it was going to have in the country. All you had to do was look at Britain and France and all this, right? We got nowhere. Anya O'Connell was the biggest vote getter of the lot of us. She got 1,000 votes. Now, and that's something when you think about it. Who's got the? I mean, you think about people who ran lately; they didn't even get next or near that, right? My highest return was 600, I think, and that's even better than people got last year or so. You know, it's better than that. And I remember before the local elections before last, I went to the local paper. It has, I forget what, but it had a big enough circulation, right, on the north side of Dublin. And I put an ad out for it, in it, about the upcoming local elections. And I told them, ask about immigration and all these issues, yeah. And I put my phone number up, a throwaway phone, by the way. But, now, so What is going on? I mean, the effects are far more to see, especially in the poorer areas, the working class areas, than they were 20 years ago. And yet, attitudes haven't changed. And by the way, lads, when I'm at
the propaganda has gotten stronger. So.
Yeah. And you know another thing that stood us down, lads? Christianity, being decent, looking after your fellow man. It's been amused and abused, nearly. Misused and abused.
Mm.
And I look back, and I can't look forward because, to tell you the truth, I don't want to look forward. You seen that black who was fucking well shot there lately, yeah?
Yeah, George.
Mm-hmm. George Kenko.
What's his name?
Nice cup of Kenko.
George
Kencho.
He's a Nigerian.
Now let's go on to my favorite. My favorite bunch of them all is Nigerian, right? Other people love the Chinese. You know where I'm coming from, pick your pick, but Nigerians especially. And by the way, I would advise people here now, not to be getting into taxi with foreign drivers, right? Because I don't think that they have passed their exams as regards taxi driving, right?
In general.
Oh no, I just tell
most
you,
of them.
Right. In general, because I didn't do it officially, but I done the taxi exam, right? Just for the crack. And I done pretty well with it because from my old experience of Dublin, yeah. Now the new bits I didn't know so much. Now it's a hard exam.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't. And by the way, safety wise, in any case, can they drive most of them? You must remember this. The government at one time, I don't know if it still is doing this, but it was giving Africans money to get their hair done.
What now?
You see, you're laughing. You think this is, come on, Pat. Yeah. But you weren't. Because these special hairdos. And then that would mean they could that would mean, with their wigs and everything like this, and they have straight hair or curly hair. I don't know what the fuck they have, right? But then they could only go to their own hairdresser. Wasn't that happy, wasn't it?
No.
And you bring your little chit after gobshite taxpayer for 100 quid, right? What a joke. And by the way, I was also told years back, and I was sent proof of it, which I can't find now, that the government was subsidising their cars.
I think anything with welfare, I don't know if people know, you probably know, Pat, there's welfare officers. So essentially you can go in, excuse me, or anyone can go in and ask them for anything and they'll get it. There's been one or two times in my life where I've had to go to a welfare officer and it's fucking humiliating. But there's people in there, there's people who know the system inside out and will milk it for every fucking penny it's worth. And it can't be denied. The black guys I know, they know how to milk it. They could probably open up a consultancy on it.
You do. Do you not think that they have consultancies on it? Come on now, out of that. These figures have been told by just fellas go ahead of them.
Charities, NGOs.
Lads, please. We'll be here all night.
Yeah, well, I'll go back to your Nigeria. We were talking about George being from Nigeria. So what I've been doing, Pat, I've been trying to look at the connections. Like what would make somebody want to come to Ireland? So the first thing is the language. So there's basically English. So Nigerians would have been, the British Empire. So they would have got English. So there is a link.
Did you ever think? Sorry about now if I interrupt you again. Right, we've a common travel area with the Brits. Right, something that nobody ever talks about either. Right. Do you not think that you see all these Indians, Pakis, and Pakistanis, and Nigerians are now floating around the place that they didn't come in from Britain?
Well, I was trying to figure out as well. There's no direct flights from Nigeria to Ireland. So this, and with the EU treaties, you're supposed to seek asylum in the first country where you
the Dublin Convention.
Exactly. Thank you. So there's no direct route here. So then I was just doing a little bit of digging, and the other connection really with Nigeria is the Catholic Church and the missionaries.
Yes.
So they would essentially have introduced those Nigerian people to Irish culture. And then obviously there's our very generous welfare system, which if you were trying to get out of a shithole, no matter where it would be, we are essentially a shining beacon to the whole of the fucking world. And
Trot.
So you would have to be probably insane not to try and get here. And then once you do get here, you're essentially staying to protest or for people to voice their opinion against it. To this day, from the people I talk to, it's almost impossible for them. There's a policeman in their head that's essentially beating them with a stick anytime they try to speak logically about it.
Then what you just said there, as a country, we're finished, and as a people, because it's never going to end. Never. It's not going to end. So we're finished.
Maybe. I'm trying to think. My next series of questions is around: are we fucking finished?
By the way, just as regards Nigerians, right? My favorite people, by the way, right? Mm-hmm. If any of them are listening to me, how are you doing? Yeah. Now, most of them, came here, a lot through Britain and then through the 6 counties, right? And they got here. A lot of them were pregnant, right? So they got here. And what they done was they dropped the sprog, right? Now, the sprog is the fella that you see running around the places now in this puffin jacket, which costs 1,000. What's the name of those jackets? That there's the brand name for them that cost, I believe, 1,600 quid or so, right? And in Nike shoes and all that crap, yeah. And they're downtrodden. I know how we're downtrodden, right? But besides all that, they were dropped, 17 years ago, 18 years ago, 19 years ago by their big fat mama from Lagos, And by the way, they weren't from the slums of Lagos. A lot of these were civil servants and all, right? Now, they were dropped. Now, you think about it this way. Let's go back, and they're going to use this excuse, so I'm not telling anything in secrets, that they're traumatized, right? That you, mama, only dropped them to stay in this country. That's all they were there for. That's all they were brought into the world for, right? Now, also, our STDs went up like 90. They went up sky high. And it was reported all over the world that Ireland's HIV was tremendous. It was all these foreigners, because they won't distinguish the Irish from the foreigners.
Yep.
And nobody talks. Have we any pride in our country anymore? Who we are? I mean, you look at Balbriggan, Terrellstown, and I've heard stories from all out these places, right? The Dyke, that's Clondalkin, by the way, right? We used to call it the Dyke in our day, right? Or the Klondike, which it is a bit more like now. But now that's no disrespect to all my Clondalkers. But in any case, you go out to all these places now, and you see all these foreigners all over the place. Then, I'll tell you, let's go out to Dalkey. Let's go out to Foxrock. Yeah. Now, why are the socialists demanding that all these places have a vibrant foreign community, diversification, or as I call it, perversification? It's a twist of my tongue. Yeah. But why are they demanding this? Do you ever hear them be asking this? Do you ever hear the mediocre asking them this? It's a blatant, obvious question. There was Vincent Brownells from fucking Black Rock. Yeah. The lefties loved him. Yeah. He never asked that question. As you just said.
Are you saying, Pat, if you like them, live with them?
I wouldn't feckle well have them feckle well within a bloody well nuke blast of me. Right? Back to Africa before you can fucking even say, oh, that's the Irish Sea. I've no time for that. I'm sorry, lads. I'm not fucking well on the way in. I'm on the way out. It's the young kids who are going to suffer this, right? Mm-hmm. And it was my generation who fecked them over. I'll take that responsibility. I tried to do something about it, right? Now I see these young, and look at the tanks we're getting. They paraded through Blanchardstown there the other day. They paraded through fucking Drogheda. They think they're in Compton. Their attitude is Compton. It's not It's not fucking Doolin. It's Compton. They want to be gangsters.
They actually do embrace the American gangster aesthetic.
I
They say the words, they dress the way, they listen to the music.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say to you. Crap music, right? And thinking with jackets that cost 1,600 bleeding quid, who pays for that? We go back to the same thing again. Welfare. The poor old Egypt who's walking. Now, I'm telling you this, and I put it out there. I put it up on my Twitter. So this is nothing new, lads, with Pat, right? Maybe this way nobody follows me, yeah? But they'd be on a ferry boat out of here and into international wars, and I tell the UN, you look after them. And what I do in the meantime, I think we'll get the fucking Navy. By the way, we must talk, if you ever get back to me, lads, about how we're running down the army of this country and all that. But that's another thing, right? On purpose, by the way, right? On purpose. But I'd also, if the time comes, get a sub to circle the fucking ships. Now, I'll leave it at that, right? By the way, not on the subject. Yes.
If the Irish people don't actually see what's going on, then what do we do? Because we can try to set up a political party, run candidates, try to get people in to at least try to reverse all of these negative, horrible things that are going on. But without the mandate of the people, then we're not going to get those candidates in. So what the hell do we do here? What's the first step?
All right, you're leading me up the garden path, are you? Yeah, right. Now, first of all, have the Irish people a mandate? Ask yourself that question, right? Are they too stupid to have a mandate, right? Now, are they? I mean, look what the country has become. And yet, they went in, think about it this way now. I'll go this way. I'll go back to the abortion referendum, right? These people of sound mind and so forth like this, with months and years of debate on this thing, went in to a booth, got their pen in the privacy of the booth, and voted for the murder of the most innocent, who hadn't even been born, right? The homicide, right, of these innocent, right? They voted yes for that, these people. Right? Now, nobody forced them or anything like this. They knew what it was about and all that. They can't say they were ignorant, right? Now, we say tomorrow, I say, right, there's Pat. He's an outrageous right-wing fucking conservative Torah, right? But he's after getting in, and he's demanding that we bring in hanging for murder, right? And that we have a referendum on it, right? I spell referendums now with a D-U-M, right? But, you got that one. Yeah, great. I hope your listeners do. So we say I have my referendum, Mad Pat, yeah? I don't know if you ever knew that track. If I ever run again, I'm going to have that horse tips track, by the way. Mad Pat is on the road again, right? Great.
Brilliant.
Yeah, isn't it? Oh, but yeah. But in any case, so I have my referendum on hanging, right? For murder. Now, convicted murderers, right? I've gone through the whole jury system. I'd even throw in an appeal, but I wouldn't. But that's, we'd say, just, right? But in any case, now, I'll ask you, would the Irish people vote for that? Yes to that?
No, I don't think so.
No. Oh, here's the moral agenda in Ireland now. But they couldn't vote for the most innocent, defenceless. Think about it. Think about that, what we've become. Do we deserve to exist? This is a wholly moral question that nobody is asking. And I'm not a philosopher, but I could see this right at the start. I could see this, right? The Irish people, should we just cast them aside?
I've struggled with that question for a while myself, Pat.
Oh, so you've asked yourself that question, yeah?
God, yeah.
So how many? Do you know many people who have though? So,
just a handful.
There you go. So there's Paddy, yeah, and Dina Bull, Fat Pat, yeah. Can't see even his meb because of his belly, right? I'll explain what a meb is some other time, right? But he's there for the murder of children. Now, defenseless, innocent, unborn, right? As pure as could be, but he won't vote to hang proven murderers. There's something wrong with us. There is something wrong with the West. We've lost our way. Now, you asked me then after asking that question, right? we'd say my type, conservatives, nationalists, right-wingers, as I call myself, right? Which I am, right? Will we get power? No, it's obvious we won't. And I tell you why. We say our party tomorrow, I call it our party, right? We now remember with the way the dollar is at the moment, no matter what scandal or so, they're going to be there for 5 years, right? 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they're laughing at us, especially that Shamid and all this. Laughing at us, right? So they're there for 5 years. So we run our party in 5 years' time. And we get 7 people, right? 7 people, right? 5 years after that, we run on our party again. We get 14 people in. So that's 15 years hence, if you see where I'm coming from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'd say that eventually after 30, 40 years, we get to be major party, right?
Mm-hmm.
A, nobody will form a coalition with us.
Mm-hmm.
B, even if we got to power, they'd find some way of keeping us out with it. Look at France. The Conservatives and the Socialists came together to keep Marine Le Pen out, right? So they find some way. Or the EU will block us or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So democracy is a sham then. Is anybody looking at, or is people afraid to say this? Democracy, it'll get you nowhere, right? So after walking me down this path, lads, should I go into the next? So the alternative.
Please.
Yeah, here we go. So we'll start off.
I know what's coming.
Yeah, well, there you go, you see. I was going to put up a blog about this, but I put up my Twitter first and I got no return on the Twitter, so there's no point writing me a blog about it. But I was going to start with the gun or the ballot box. Ballot box or the gun. The old Irish thing, right? Coming from the IRA thing, right? So what's the next alternative? Right. The next alternative is that you go through the hard way like the commies done. You infiltrate schools and everything like that. And, and still hold it off on the fucking gun bit, right? So that's going to take you a long, long time. Right?
25 years, roughly.
Long.
The KGB said. Yeah.
Long. Right. Now, so what's your alternative? The gun. Right. Now, first of all, you can have revolts on the street. You can have this, that, and so forth like that. Right? But what they've done is they've given us now nearly no alternative. You tell me what is the alternative to us collapsing altogether as a society, as a race? Tell me. It's not democracy. Democracy has been abused completely. You look at our country now. How many forms of government, slices of government have we? We've got the Dáil, which is the parliament to all my people from abroad listening out there. Yeah. But you've got the Dáil. No, you've got a Presidente, yeah, up the road there, the poet. Presidente, you've got the Dáil, right, the Parliament. Then you've got the Shamit. Then you've got county councillors. Then you've got the civil service. Then you've got the public service. Now we're at 6 at this stage, right? And then you've got the NGOs. 6 billion a year, right? 6 billion a year. So I'm after counting 7 slices of government now at this stage. And nepotism is rife in this country. Yep. It's rife. And the unions were the worst of them at nepotism. And once nepotism gets in, you don't get the best of people. And you won't get people running for politics because did you see the dishonesty that's in it? And if you knock at the door, you have to promise them something before they'll even consider you. Right? So I'm after going through all this with you now, right? So I'm asking the question now is democracy finished?
It's looking like it. Yeah.
There you go. So what's the alternative? So I've come up with an alternative, right? Because nobody else will say it. And this is the cowardice of Twitter. And it gets up my nose too, yeah? That nobody will talk about this. But that's the only option I have left for the young kids coming up. And it's going to be very difficult for them. You see the ones already squealing on people who are having a pint or so because of this COVID crap. Yeah? Now, So how are they going to do it? So in other words, what I'm telling you, more or less, if democracy is finished, right, the ballot box, right, the alternative is the gun. But the gun, I'm afraid, it would take too long to, right? So that would mean then, well, Pat, then what does that mean, Pat? That means that Ireland is finished. It's finished. We were only a small, but look, there were 7 million of us on an island, and a bunch of them, a minority, couldn't share it with us. And you can't say boo about that little minority as it is. I mean, I remember the Good Friday deal, and I looked at it. I said, hang on a minute. We're going to give this minority, who leave out the 400 years, right? But we'll just throw in 50 years, from 1922 to 1969, right? We'd just say about 50 years. Couldn't get on with their Catholic neighbours. Couldn't be decent to them, or so forth like this. And we were going to give those in that Belfast deal the right to say no to unification. And we did. And we fucking nuts. And then what did we do? Now here's Paddy again. I go back to you want Paddy to vote you with the barrel, right? Now, and what did Paddy do? As you can have a dual passport. Here's a second passport for you, Mr. Orangeman. Who fucking hates my guts to beat the fucking band, right? With the bitter mouth. Yeah, all you have to do is look at some of them, Donaldson and so forth, the bitter mouth, right? And that's what they were called. They were called the bitter mouths. They wouldn't even take, if you notice, they won't even take Irish names. Now, what did we do? He says, oh, we'll give you a second passport. Here's my passport. So now you can have your Brit passport and Irish passport. But the likes of me, I can only have one passport. I mean, pure and utter nuts. And the Paddy went and he voted for it. We are living in the age of unreason, lads. Illogic. Plato has done a run. But I think Ireland is suffering from it the most. Other countries are too big a population to be saturated so quickly, right? If you've been in France, Italy, and so forth like that, look what we've done to the Greeks. We threw them to the wolves, the cradle of civilization.
Yep.
And what did the Germans do to thank us? They gave us the bank fucking thing. And what did they do with the Greeks? They screwed them over with all these figures coming in from Turkey and so forth like that. That's the thanks you get. And you know what Germany done too? When remember Bulgaria and Romania came into the EEC, which they should never have left being in, right? But when they came in, there was 3 countries who said, yeah, we let you in immediately to work here. Ireland, Germany, and fucking well Sweden. The Paddy again, right? Now, I'm telling you this. Guess who was buying up all the land, the best land in Romania when that happened? Because Romania is some of the richest land because of the communes. The Germans.
Naturally.
It's a fucking joke. It's a con job. I go down the road there now and you see all the foreigners coming over here buying the houses, buying them in block and everything like that. Why aren't we saying foreigners can't buy the housing? By the way, lads, I'm going off track here. I'm going back onto that Good Friday deal, right, to prove about democracy again. Look at it. It was a complete, and yet 95% of people went and voted for it. Amazing. Think about it. Here you go, Orange Man. Here's a dual passport. Sure, you have a veto. And what the majority say. And once that's there, politicians can use and abuse it forevermore. And they never thank us.
Were people even aware of those details? Because
yes,
I wasn't.
Look. Then people shouldn't be allowed voters, you know. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, we spoke about it. Sorry, Pat, to interrupt you. We spoke about it recently, that citizenship
By the way,
doesn't mean a fucking thing.
Yeah, but can I just say one thing before I leave that subject, yeah? Look at all our referendums. Our children's referendum. We let that bag, Fitzgerald, the crook, her bill, and we voted for it. That the state will have more power over the children. Yeah. We voted yes to it. Come on. And then what did we do? Look at the fucking amount of saps we sent to the EU. There must be people over in the EU Parliament looking at the man in the pink fickle thing. You know, a corrupt fickle, dishonoured fickle Minister for Justice. Think about what they're looking at. And we sent them. And you want me to say that Paddy's going to vote her way out of this? Oh, by the way, I better watch myself saying Paddy. Some of them take, umbrage to that.
Fucking.
Now you can't say that on air, by the way, right? Oh, by the way, now I went off subject, so excuse me, right? But you did ask me
Not at all.
about citizenship or so forth like that.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about people having the right to vote, and you also mentioned about people being at the age of 30 before they should be allowed vote, I think, or before you make any serious decision in your life, you should probably wait until you're at least over the age of 30 to begin with. But we were talking recently about citizenship, that it means fuck all. If you basically essentially charge people for citizenship, which is what citizenship is in Ireland, you essentially pay €950 again to the state, and you get your citizenship. So I've been trying to see if there is a bright shining fucking star out there about how we make our way out of it. I normally come up against a roadblock, but I think what we need better individuals. We need better people to be better fucking citizens. I don't know if we can do it as a nation. Maybe the starting point is doing it as small groups of people. I don't know. It's just I think what we need is better people, rather than focusing on, okay, well, we need to change the government, we need to have an insurrection. I think if we had an insurrection, we'd probably rebuild the whole same fucking dirty system 20 years down the road, you know.
You see, is that not the sort of cop out in its own way?
In a way, it is. I'll agree with you on
that. I mean, I'm putting my I'm saying it, right? I'm saying it. And I've given examples of where democracy is in Ireland, right? And the vote, right? Now, I have asked the question then, what is the alternative? And there seems to be no alternative. You must remember, you live in a country where the judges are politically appointed. You must look at this now. It's only small groups like Gemma O'Doherty, John Waters, we say the IFP, NP, who have objected to what's going on. Where's the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, who's been dipping into the taxpayers' pocket for how long? By the way, when I'm on it, why is there a National Women's Council? Where's the Men's Council? That's what I'm trying to get at here.
That old chestnut.
These things they're there, they're hitting us over the head. And they have been for 20, 30 years, you know. I mean, I'd say one thing about the women in any case, they've proven that they're just as bad as men as regards politics. If not worse. And for that, I'm grateful. You know? I mean, look at the Minister for Justice at the moment. She wants to bring in the hate bill. Look at your one beforehand with the double barrel name. She brought in 70 professorships just for fucking women. Jesus Christ almighty. Come on, lads. We're in effect a loony then. You should have kept the Garmin open up there. I took a stroll through the Garmin there, so I did. Grange Garmin, yeah. I knew it as a kid. No, I wasn't a patient, right? But in any case, they built a brand new loose line up there. Oh, grand spanking new, yeah. A couple of beer cans through and beside it already, right? Good old Dublin, because we won't punish the effective dirt bags, right? And the majority again have to suffer for the few. But they're after building a load of apartments there, and I think they're the co-living student apartments, right? And there was a builder coming out of it, and I asked him what's the story, and he says, I think there was 140 of them there or something like that, right? But he says only about 58 have been bought. He says Irish students can't afford them. I'm telling you this now, lads. That's in the middle class area, right beside the loose line, yeah? I'm telling you this. When that perv, O'Gorman, publishes his DP bill next week, or next February, where do you think he's going to put these geezers? He wants them all to have own-door living space. Anybody thinking of that? Where's he going to put all the homeless and the junkies and everything like that? And these were nice areas of Dublin. And if you noticed in this COVID bill, lads, that they're allowed build what's on the plan, that's which being given plan. So all these co-living spaces are still being built. And nobody says that. If nobody can afford them or nobody wants to live in them, who's going to live in them? That's what I'm trying to say to you. I'm trying to say nobody is asking questions. B, then when I say, well, what's the alternative? Oh, well, we run for election. Yeah. And then when I give my effective thing, nobody wants to listen to that. But I'm afraid, lads, you're going to have to go. Look who inspired 1916. It was the old IRB lads, right? The old sweats, the Fenians, right? You're going to have to start all that way again, right? That thinking. And it's going to be old sweats like me, but unfortunately, I know this, I won't be around that when if it ever comes, the striking the anvil. Because, and the young kids, you have to think, as we discussed earlier on, have they been too indoctrinated? So my point then is, then the country is finished. Being Irish is finished. Going around, how many people do you see anymore going around as I used to see as a kid, in fucking Gansies, jumpers, which your mother had knit for your granny or so forth like this? We've lost all those traits.
Oh,
even though we've more time to ourselves and everything like that. Yeah. I remember looking at my father, and he gave out to us when we started wearing jeans, because he worked in America, in Philadelphia, and jeans were workwear. And then you went out in your suit, and they had your hats and everything like that, Now look at us. We spend a fortune, 100 quid on a pair of jeans. Like, there's something wrong with us. We're not stopping. We're not thinking. And unfortunately, I think it's too late. And maybe, by the way, I'll ask you a question, lads, between the two of you, right? And the KBG lad who's listening in. But I'll ask this between us, right? What do you think the percentage of foreigners is in this country?
20, somewhere between 20 and 25% of the population.
I would even go a little higher and say pushing 30.
I would agree with that. Easily agree with you. Right, so that's 1/3 of your population. Now, I read years ago, and I'm sorry I didn't keep it, but it was a Dutch report, and it said that once you go over 14%, you're in danger totally of losing everything of your being. So what you've just described there, we're double that, lads. Go down the country. Right? I mean, they're coming out of my mother's little town. I won't mention it, right? It was a beautiful town in its day. I remember it, right? Had its first murder, foreigners. There was another little village out the road, 6 miles out the road. Had the reputation, I better not say what its reputation was, but it had so many pubs, right? Well, I'll go no further than that, right? Its first murder, foreigners again. Now, this is the benefits that it's been brought into our country, right? And yet, you have a little non-entity like Micheál Martin telling us that sovereignty doesn't matter. And he said that in 2017, that's 3 years ago. And yet he was still elected by the rebel county.
Yeah, he said that sovereignty is an outdated notion.
Yes.
And, in a way, he's right, because they run the game now, and they don't want sovereignty. So, and the way that they've arranged it, whatever the fuck they've done to us as people.
But may I ask you a question? Here's the question I'll ask. Here were the Irish people supposed to be some of the most rebellious in the world, right? 800 years, all that crap, yeah? 1969, 96 or whatever like that, yeah? And one of the things about the Good Friday Agreement too, lads, one of the reasons too for that, you must remember, is to get the IRA to get rid of their weapons, right? That was the main reason, I'd say, really, right? Now, so you look at all that, and you tell me there's hope for Irish people and for Ireland?
Yeah, I don't think, I honestly don't think, I'm not hopeful. I think your thing about the fighting Irish, I've asked myself that a few times, is that just a myth? Is that a lie we were told just to make ourselves feel a little bit better about our fucking selves? Because personally, I don't see it around me.
Well, no, I would disagree with you there. I think there was, right? Don't get me wrong, right?
I don't think I look at, now, I'm not talking about you, obviously, in or any one person in particular, but I think in general, any sort of insurrection, it's very few people who pull it off or engage with it, the majority of people generally want nothing to do with it and just to be left alone to live their daily life, and they seem happy with that,
it was only something like 3 or 4% of the US population that took part in the revolution against Britain. And that's remembered to this day, that, you know, that there's very few who will actually stand up for liberty. But on the other hand, it was a case of whether most of other people just didn't want to have anything to do with it. But I think in this situation, most people would actually stand up against us, and that's totally different.
You see, it's always small groups that do cause revolutions, right? Now, revolutions are really won after, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, we had our civil war and so forth, like our own civil war, as I call it, right? Which was a staged affair in a certain way, right? But it's only small groupings that will start it. But you have to think at the same time, have the Irish people been so unique now, so globalized, yeah, that there's no hope for them? You look at the Brits, right? Our British friends across the water. They were cannon fodder for years for their establishment. First World War came. They got slaughtered in their droves, right?
Yep.
Now, at least the French army had a mutiny and so forth like that. What did the Brits do? Nothing. That's per usual, right? Now, they came back home and there was nothing there for them again. And that's why the Aussies and the British army, that's what I'm always amazed when I see pictures of Dublin in 1920 and I see British soldiers. I say to myself, geez, did they not learn? You know? But I put that up on my Twitter too, and maybe it's too intellectual for my followers or whatever. Oh, Jesus Christ, I left now. But in any case, I asked myself that question. Why didn't the Brits have a revolution? Why didn't they overthrow their establishment? Right? At least we did. You know? So that's why I admired them so much in 1916. They went against the whole consensus, if you think about it, and went out there. And then again, by the way, I don't think they've got the message yet down in Cork, you know, but somebody will tell them sometime, like, you know. That's a history lesson, lads, by the way. But in any case, the rebel county again. But in any case, but that's what I'm trying to say to you. So you might look at us and say, Jay, per se, we're not up to much. But Jesus Christ, there's been other countries you have to fucking think, what the fuck were they doing? You know? Now, Ireland, I think it would be particularly hard though now for a subversive group, yeah, because of the amount of surveillance now that's going on. You know, benign surveillance. When you walk into a supermarket, when you walk down the street, remember that 2 meters is supposed to be the best for camera work.
Facial recognition.
Facial recognition, right? So it would be much more difficult now, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sorry to be so pessimistic, but if people do not start talking about what I just talked there about the ballot box or the gun, but then they're running away from it. And they've been running away from looking at things for the past 20, 25 years in this country, right? So if they keep running about it, you must remember, all these foreigners are breeding, right? We're not, right? So we're going to be outbred. Next, they're going to be as county councillors, which they are already. Then they're going to be TDs. Then they're going to be ministers. Then they're going to be bloody well Taoiseach. And it'll happen very rapidly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If we came this far in 20 years, then yeah, it's going to be a rapid change.
Well, you look at our God love them, the people in our homes now, right? In God love our elder, right? And who do you think most of their carers are now? Imagine your end days, right? And you're being cared by foreigners. And by the way, lads, now sorry, I'm going to say this too, right? You look at the pension age that you try to bring it up, right? Now their ultimate age is 70, by the way, right? That's what this crowd are up to. So you've worked all your life, right? And instead, what did the Sleevings and the doll? And there was no objection. Did anybody ever remember this being brought up even by the mediocre or so? Or that Egypt in the park? Or the Shamed? Or county councillors? They brought it up to 66, no objections. And they were bringing it up to 67, only for the shinners copped onto it. And instead of saying the dishonesty in Irish politics now is per usual, oh, we're going to stop it at 66. No, he says we're putting it to a committee. And we let them away with this. And we let people, I'll come back to the welfare again, and I'll come back to the workers. We've got people who worked from possibly 15 years of age, and we're going to increase pension age on them, while our politicians gave themselves a pay increase. Are we mad?
The super dole.
And you say to me, Jeepers Pat, you're talking about revolutions. There should have been a revolution fucking years ago. These people are taking the piss out of us. If it's correct that the Dáil bar is still open, come on, lads. You know, come on. How much are you going to take? 67.
Actually, now that you mention the Dáil bar, is the bar in the forecourts still open? Because I don't see those guys lasting without a pint in the morning before they go into court.
Well, you see, our B-wig began buffoonery. Yeah. Remember, the EU asked the government to do something. It asked them two things. I forget, here's my memory again. They done something about the first thing, and they asked them to do something about our legal system. Guess what? They haven't done a thing about it. Our boys in their wigs and gowns, right?
Yeah.
Me love. And I can tell you, I was a jury foreman down there once, and never again, right? Never again, right? This Egypt on his perch in his wig. Jesus Christ Almighty! I'm glad your man. I'm glad he fucking was loaned up to it. Because I would have been jailed for contempt. I couldn't stop myself laughing. These Egypts going around in wigs and gowns. Come on. Go me load. Fucking hell. What a country we've become. You know? I mean, is anybody thinking, who are you? Who are you to tell me, you hypocrite? You know? I mean, look at them. They're out in Dalkey, they're out in Foxrock, they're out in fucking, all these places. And not a fucking foreigner amongst them. But it's okay to stuff them up in Balbriggan with people who just bought their houses or in Turlestown. Think about that. Now, just think about that. And you're asking me, then, well, what will you do about it, Pat? And I give you the alternative. If the gun doesn't come out, lads, then we're cowards. We're cowards completely. Because they're not afraid of us. You have to make them afraid of us. You have to fucking show, yeah, that the likes of these people will be afraid to turn a street corner. You know, that they'll be looking under their cars. Now, you might say, Jesus Christ, Pat, that's heavy. But you ask me an alternative. What else can I give you? I'm being honest.
You just rarely hear it, which is depressing, but you rarely hear it.
Well, no, I have not heard it myself. No, well, maybe it's the circles I,
yeah,
go around.
Okay, that's
I doubt it somehow or another, because most of them avoid me now in any case, right? But what I'm trying to say to you, lads, is this: then we're going nowhere. They can blather on forevermore, and I admire MP. Don't get me wrong, but this is the situation. And you look at the IFP, right? The IFP. Now, I went to one or two of their meetings, right? And I even went to Farage when he was in Dublin. And I said to myself, yeah, but nobody's talking about the common travel area. You know, you're held under the second world water line immediately if you don't do something about that. Because I have no problem with the English, the Scots and the Welsh coming here, right? But it's all the second world colonials who are coming here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who do you think is setting up all the... here's another thing, lads. I was down at I walked by this Indian takeaway, Asian takeaway, whatever, right? And now I wouldn't go near it, right, with a barge pole, right? But went by it. And there was a queue outside it of young people. Mm. Now, they had sent me in their leaflet a couple of days beforehand, right? And on it was halal.
Oh, fuck.
Now, these young people would be objecting to me going fox hunting or so, right?
Uh-huh.
But they're going to eat that shite. Think about it. That's what we've become. We're hypocrites. We've become amoral. I mean, I wouldn't let a Muslim into this country. I wouldn't.
Well, given their track record through history, yes, you would assume that you wouldn't let them in. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, lads, now this here's another thing that we won't talk about, right? Jewry, Israel. Yeah, and you see in this hate bill now they're trying to slip in that you can't say anything against Israel. You see, and in some states in America now you have to sign if you want to go for work. You have to sign that you won't say anything against it's gone so Jude over in Judas, as I call it. That's how we're becoming. We won't be able to say a thing. Wait until she brings in that you won't be able to say anything against the Muslims, the Jews, and possibly the prods. I'm finished then. You know, but think about it. This is what we've become. Look what they're doing to the Palestinians. You know, besides but we'll go into their old record even. You know, I wouldn't let them count blankets in the poorhouse. When I'll give you an example of why I say that, lads. Right? There was a minister here called Shatter, right? And because this country is so badly run, yeah. Now, he's Jewish, right? Now, nobody will ask him, but I put it up on my Twitter. Has he got a dual passport? So who is his allegiance to, right? And I'd ask Bacik that and Lentils that and any of them, right? And you notice that these people are always pushing something that's really basically anti-Irish, right? Which is immigration or so forth like this. Turn over the citizenship bill or so forth like that, right? But they made Shatter Minister for Justice and Defence at the same time. So this gobshite country gave the two security portfolios to this fella. So I would question his allegiance to this country, no problem, right? And I'll tell you why I would question it too, lads. Besides him being Jewish, right? Now, now my father served his time. I got a picture of him yesterday. I put it up on the wall with his comrades during the emergency down in Kilbride, yeah? And now remember during the emergency for other people, I'd say the Second World War, that Ireland had just been 20 years out of a civil war, 50 years out of a famine, all this, land leagues, all this, right? Even throw in the First World War, War of Independence, Civil War and everything like that, right? 1916, right? And it'd only been, we'd say, 15 years out of that when war starts, yeah? And because they've done the right thing and kept us neutral, he's been lambasted out of it. Now, all the revisionists, like the great people, right? Now, so here's Shatter when he gets in. And what does he do? He gives the fellas who deserted the army of the time, my father's army, right? And he gives them, instead of, they had a record then that he deserted, yeah? Yeah, he expunged their record. He pardoned them. Now, I wrote to that bastard, right? And I wrote, and by the way, the Irish Times did, my only letter that was published, I must stick it back up again on my Twitter sometime, did publish it.
Too.
And I said these things that I just mentioned there about after the Civil War and about all this. Yeah? But he pardoned them. They had deserted our country in its greatest need, but because of revisionism, right? And what did he do in the Dáil? He passed it. And I don't think there was an objection. And my father, now you must remember, I remember him telling us about the route marches and everything they went through and on their bicycles. We had no weapons, no nothing. Yeah. We had a couple of Spitfires. Yeah. Imagine we don't even have a jet aircraft now, despite our better times, right? And we had a couple of Buckshee tanks and a couple of carriers, right? That's what we had. These people were prepared to defend this country. And yet he pardoned the ones who fecked off. That's how sad we are. But this is the point I've been making through all this interview with you two lads there now, right? Where we are, what we are. And I'm going back to that. And that's why if you might see me going after Shatter, I'll go after him to the day I die because of what he done there. And I'm looking at the picture of my father, and he was a weapons expert. One of my brothers has some of his notebooks still, right? And there's a picture of him with two lads who are manning Vickers. That's what we had, lads. We just the old fucking World War II, World War I weapons, right? And this fella pardoned him. So there, I'm giving you a track record from the Dáil there, lads, as regards to voting patterns.
Completely and totally anti-Irish.
Now you're putting your finger
and
in. Anti-patriot.
No pushback.
Anti-sovereignty. Anti-good people. And they can badmouth all the people of past generations because they're dead. There's no comeback. Right? And that's cowardice. And that's what, if you look at the mother and baby homes and everything like that, Shoom, I'll even go back to that arsehole McCourt and Angela's ashes. I believe there was people down in Limerick who knew him, and he totally disagreed with what he said. And yet that was made into a play and a film, and it went all over the world. And they're going all over the world. It was on Sky News the other day how we treated children in these mothers and babies' homes, and kids were put in sore pits. Totally untrue. There's where we are. Deceit, dishonesty is rife in Ireland. It's honoured. You're made a shamateur. You're made a judge. You're made a military officer after a certain rank if you're connected to the political parties. And I'm sure that's the coppers too. It's endemic, and we're never going to go anywhere once you can get your cousin in, your uncle in, or so forth like that. Never going anywhere, and it's endemic. And we put up with it. You see, the government there brought in people out of as their advisors. Brought in a load of them, cost us a fortune. And yet there's kids crawling across the floor because they can't get operations to do something about their scoliosis.
And you're referring to the what do they call them? The junior ministers, and then the junior ministers also had their own advisors.
Yes. And by the way, here's a question I'll ask you. We could run this country with about 7 ministers at one time. Why do we need all these people? I counted them one time.
A balance between the different sections of society, maybe. I mean, there's only 180 of them for 4 million people. That sounds reasonable.
Well, first of all, you don't need that many. But why do you need so many ministers? Tell me why. You don't need them. What are they there for?
Ah, well, yeah, okay, ministers themselves, yeah.
Oh, no, junior ministers, all this. What do you need them for? You know, I mean.
Fuck all, especially if our government is receiving their orders mostly from Brussels anyway, I don't see why.
Now you put your finger on it. Now, see where I'm coming from. If we're globalists, we're told by the UN that the globalists glitters, do you hear him? Twitter and Google and all down in the keys there, what to do. Yeah. So why do we need them?
Yep.
So you're asking me then, there's plenty of fodder there, lads, for a revolution. There's plenty of fodder. There's just look at the pensions they give themselves and everything like that. Look at the scandal that's going on if your man takes over the Department of Health now. How much he'll get, even when he has a pension even. Look at the big hole in the ground up in James Street there for the Children's Hospital. You know? I mean, part of that area up there is Junkiesville. Why wasn't it built on the grounds of Connolly Hospital where it was beside everything? A loose line beside it, the M50 beside it, everything. Where people from all over the country could get to it quickly. The Phoenix Park beside it, the zoo beside it for the children and everything. I'm telling you this, if I had to get over there now from here, I'd have to cross, it'd be horrendous to get there because of traffic, because of the road system.
Mm-hmm.
So you explain that to me now, how the hell that was built there. And you know all these, what you call it, riot control, all these barriers, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm not boring you at this stage, lads.
No.
Like, you know? But I was up at a protest as regards this COVID outside the Dáil. And I made a remark to lads because of all the barriers all around the place. Yeah. Guess who owns them? Owns that company?
I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Dennis O'Brien.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Ah, so it's that close to home, is it? Jesus.
It's a joke, lads. Come on. What a joke.
Ah, God.
Go down. Remember the famous.
By the way, Pat,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're. Oh, actually, you know what? I want to get your reaction to this. Okay, I don't know where you stand with like conspiracy theories, as they call them. But last week, our own government reacted to the so-called riot in Washington, D.C. It was basically a bunch of people. They were allowed to walk into the Capitol building. Yes. One got shot in the neck. They called that a riot. So naturally, our gobshite government said, oh, now we've got an opportunity. They said, well, we need to beef up security here in Leinster House. They already have basically the whole of the military there with all the weaponry that they can fucking imagine, guards on 24/7, but they want more security. So what happens a few days ago, Friday afternoon, by the way, a bomb threat gets called into Leinster House. Wow, isn't that amazing timing? When has the last, Pat, you would probably have a better memory for this than I. When's the last time there's been a bomb threat called into any government building in this country? We don't do it. The Irish don't have balls like that. But it just so happens a week after they suggest beefed up security, a bomb threat gets called in. What's your take on that?
Well, I didn't know about this, by the way, in any case, because I don't pay any attention. I don't read newspapers. I used to read 2 newspapers a day. I mean, people used to read newspapers in their day. Like my father would read 2 newspapers a day. Now, the Independent wouldn't be allowed into the country or into the house. Oh, yeah. No. It was the Irish press. Well, because of how they treated the lockout and so forth, like that, Mark Murphy and all that. The long memories, then, you see. Fine Gael took a shilling off the pensioners. And my father never forgave them for that. So Fine Gael have a record. You see, we forget what the old sweats used to remember, lads. Right? Now, but as regards your bomb threat, right? A, lads, you don't have to get them in the doll in any case, right? B, it's a complete another setup. That's what you're alluding to, I presume, altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But the tick paddy will believe it, obviously.
Yeah.
Right?
Jeez.
And by the way, here's the thing, lads. You've got the mediocre is in collusion with them. You look at even our regional papers. By the way, here's a good thing, lads. Our provincial papers, they don't like being called provincial papers anymore, I think, either. You know, they've got ideas about themselves, even in the article, you know. But in any case, our provincial papers and newspapers or radio stations are just as bad as the ones in Dublin.
God, yeah.
They're atrocious, right? So they're feeding them this thing, and oh God, disgraceful. Now, first of all, the politicians, they must be worried about something, that something's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, as regards America and what you said there, as regards this so-called right, it must have been pussy riot over there, right? Because it's a load of crap altogether. We all know that, right? Now, and you know what the Russians done with pussy riot in any case, like, you know, fair ball to them, right? But over here, you know, I wouldn't go near the doll to get them, lads. Make them afraid. That's what you do. That's what you do. There's where I'm coming from, right? That's what subversion will be in the coming years. Yeah? You will not be able to fucking piss in a pot, lad, but you'll be looking over your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do. No, lads, I expect any minute now to hear a knock on my door. You know?
Yeah.
Actually, oh, by the way, all those coppers you were talking about in the doll, they'll fucking well come crowding in through that door yet, like, you know. And I say, have you fuck all else to be doing, lads? And when I get fucking tapped around the place with a couple of batting things and all that, yes, lads, just have a bit to be doing, you know. So what I'm trying to tell you is the doll is a joke, lads. They made it. By the way, I didn't make a joke of it. They did. Right? I remember I looked at the shaman on the television. You look at RTE, nobody does now, right? They're taking the piss out. Yeah? Their ads even, all blacks on them and everything like that. Yeah? I put up my bill there for the gas company, a black on it. Yeah? They're taking the piss out of us, right? So what are we going to do about it, lads? Are we going to accept it? If nothing else comes out of this interview, lads, or whatever, like, you know, is this from me. What are you going to do about it? Yeah? They're taking the piss out of us, lads. They're not scared of us. You look at the people who were elected in the last election. Harris. Fuck the jeepers. Come on. You know? That twat up the road there. Second one, oh God. I put up my Twitter, you might have seen it if you are looking at it, about him today. He was up doing some jogging up in the Phoenix Park, and you know the way he's so narcissistic. He had to put himself up on YouTube or something like that. So I took the piss out of him, you know. Well, he shouldn't have put himself up there to be taking the piss out, like, you know. But until, lads, they're made aware that we're there. Do you know that it concentrates the mind, the old saying? The gallows. Well, lads, but it's true. And now, I won't be around for it, lads. I'd love to be around for it. If you said, right, we're having it tomorrow, you'd throw me in the front line, right? No problem. Now, I'd be organising things because I'm not going to have people thinking, just be cannon fodder. But what I'm trying to say to you, I won't, more than likely. But if I can, I'll be like the old Fenians, right? Being subversive. Because I look at them, and I look at the scaldy faces of them. Yeah, Joe Duffy is an obnoxious fucking yoke. But he's the most viewers, or the most listeners.
Yep.
How many people look at the Late Late Show with Tubridy?
Even the people who hate what's coming across, they still watch it.
Yes.
They're still programmed into it. It's insane.
And but go across even the private stations. I don't even listen to the car radio in the car. I stick on a CD. I hardly look at the television anymore, though I still have to pay a TV license for it. Now, I'm off the TV license when I mentioned that subject. I always paid my TV license because the sum of RTE is bigger than the whole, shall we say, right? There's good people in there at the same time. They make good programming and so forth like that, yeah? Mm-hmm. But after what they done at Christmas, and they done that on purpose, right? They done that on purpose because it would have to go through the producer, the editor, and everything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, after what they done at Christmas, I'm seriously thinking now I won't be paying anymore. That was disgraceful. And the comeback of that, lads, is now do Muhammad. But he won't. He won't.
True.
And he won't. And they blaspheme and they can do all they like. And I tell you why they will do it too. Because the Catholic Church is a Nancy now. I'll tell you how you would have stopped that COVID, right? I'll tell you, and it was an easy thing to do. If all the publicans, the GAA and the church had come together, or even just individually and said, no, we're opening up our pubs. The church said, we're opening up our churches. The GAA said, and remember, it used to be the GAA that was supposedly nationalist and it stayed, right? It was, by the way. But if they even individually had said, no, we're not going, we're opening up, yeah? What could the government do? But they didn't, right? Mm-hmm. And all these businesses now that are going to go to, what did they do? You see, the Italians already are opening up their restaurants and the
Polish.
Yeah. There you go. Now, the small businesses now, when this is over, if it's ever over, because it's going to be ongoing, lads, yeah?
It won't be over.
No. Yeah, but do you think I have any sympathy for I'll have any sympathy for the publicans, the church, the GAA, the small business? No, they done nothing. The church is a disgrace, a total and utter disgrace. And I believe the fellow who's coming in to replace Martin as Archbishop Martin of Dublin is nearly worse than him.
Yeah, pro-gay, against celibacy in the priesthood. Right?
Is he a Jesuit?
Well, which one of them aren't?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but you must remember that this Pope, lost Ireland, and he's lost Argentina, his home country, to abortion. That's some record. That's some record. The Archbishop of Dublin didn't stand up once and say God overrules the secular state, or you want the separation, church and state. Well, you're going to have it now. They're opening up the churches, but they didn't. He went along.
Yeah. There's another segment of the population and institution that just turned their backs on us. Is the church, sadly.
The church, the GAA is an institution. Come on,
Well, the GAA used to be responsible for training our IRA soldiers under the cover of playing games. So, what the fuck happened there?
Well, I tell you, the GAA has been going down since the 90s. I can name the MEP at Egypt, and then there was McDonough before him from Galway. So it's been going down a long time. I'm talking the 90s, right? So it has been going down, right? But you look at the church. The church needed a hard man coming in now. But now, so are they doing it on purpose? Is the church got it too? Now, leave the church out of this for a moment, right? But those are two institutions we've just mentioned. We mentioned the publicans used to be an institution. Now, it's losing some of its power and all that, right? Don't get me wrong. But every small place in Ireland has a pub, right? Side roads, everything like that. All he had to do is, oh no, we're opening up. Are you going to stick us all in jail? But no. And you go into Dublin now. These cafes are open, for your latte and all that crap, yeah? I can never understand this, but that's me in any case, right? And there's people queuing. Queuing to get what? That's just me, I'm just odd. But in any case, you look at that, and none of them have Irish names. They all have these makey up names. And even a lot of our pubs now don't have the family names on them anymore.
Yeah, I've noticed that around Galway specifically.
Yeah. There you go. This is what I'm coming at. We're losing our Irishness. Tourists will stop coming here.
Yeah. Or as soon as they catch wind, yeah.
No, but it's already the major complaint with Bord Fáilte that they're not meeting Irish people. Now you go to France, you meet French waiters, so forth like that, right? And all that. But no, now, is this all planned for Ireland? Are we going to be an industrial? Remember, we're a rock with the Irish Sea, the Atlantic, right? So we can be controlled, right? We're a rock, right?
Yep.
Now we can be controlled, right? Because from the sea, but we can be experiment. I think Ireland is the great experiment, right? It's just that we don't know it because we're not cute enough to cop onto it, right? Now, so we are just now, if you think about it, like effectively industrial estate, a shopping centre, a mall, an airport, a runway, right? That's all we are. We're just a colony of barracks for Google.
Yeah, a server farm, as they call it. Yeah.
Remember, they use up an awful lot of energy. And it's the Greens that are telling us, who want 10 million people in the country. Here's the hypocrisy again. And remember, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are hiding behind them, right? That bring 10 million people into the country. And yet they want me to effectively, grow, I shouldn't say, I was going to say grow vegetables. No, they don't mention that. But they want me to effectively go and buy an electric car.
And not burn briquettes or turf. Or even have a fireplace in your house.
Well, believe it or not now, lads, I have the fire on because I think every house should have a fire. Because think about it. No, but think about it. With a fire, and you can cook it, right? Now, if the power goes out in this country, because of all the feed we're given to Twitter and all their power centres, right? Which nobody ever talks about, right? Now, how come the Greens never mentioned this? But
that's a good question.
And what did the Greens do for me? They stuck tax on my coal, my briquette. So next year, or the following year, we'll stop making the briquettes, lads.
Yep. Board Mamona, just put that out. Mamona.
Yeah, they're going to stop making briquettes, right? Now, you go around the countryside and you see these twirly rigs. What you call them, lads? The windmills, what you call them?
Wind turbines, yeah.
Yes, you see those. Do you know that you cannot, they have to be put into earth fill, ground fill, the veins.
Yeah, no recycling.
No recycling, yeah. And
there's also no responsibility. Nobody has the responsibility of taking them down after they're erected and live their life.
Well, here's a question for you, lads, though. This is why I find about Ireland. There's that farmer. He gets a good few bob each year. He didn't give two fucks about his neighbour, though, did he? So you ask me, we've been breaking down for a long time. This old famous thing about Ireland being together and Irish people, the community. That's been breaking down a long time. Rubbish. Yeah. Right? And you might have heard me slagging rural right at the start there, lads. Yeah? But I've every right to. You go down the country now and look at the houses. And look where they are. Look at me houses. Some of them wouldn't even paint the fucking things. You know? If you were going to build in Ireland, what you should have been doing is to keep it an Irish island, you should have been given 8 houses. That's all you can build. Pick. And you first had to do the landscape and first, and it had to be in native plants, right? But we didn't. So, and yet some of our town centres are all dying. They're falling. And yet he built Aldi and Lidl just on the outskirts of these towns. You know, come on. You know, am I a fool? Well, I possibly am. If the coppers fucking kick in that door now soon, I will be. Right? But Jesus Christ, don't tell me about rural Ireland. He couldn't give a fuck. The farmers, they're effectively like junkies to the EU subsidies.
Everyone seems to be bought and paid for. Pat, do you think we should wrap it up?
Oh, yeah, no sweat, lads, yeah.
Yeah, look.
I was supposed to stay till 9:30.
Well, you must have found it interesting.
You captured me, Pat, you know.
No. Listen, lads, good to talk to you.
Good talk. I hope we can do it again. I think you've probably got a lot more in you. A lot more to say.
Well, lads, if you find me in the dish somewhere, I'm going to blame you two, lads. Right?
Okay.
I'm writing their names down already, like, you know. Did I not tell you I have my own Feckwell God Squad? But listen, lads, next time, if we are talking again, you have to talk about the security of this state and so forth like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I've alluded to there. I love that term, alluded. Jesus Christ, you know. But you have to talk about that. And you have to talk about old Ireland versus new Ireland, right? And which we have, by the way. But it was a pleasure talking to you, lads. And thanks for letting me rant off there, right? Now, I might be saying that in the morning when I'm down in the Bridewell, will explaining myself, you know? But that's the way of life. I'm honest with you, and I'm truthful. And I don't do anything in Ireland for the people of Ireland. I do it for the young kids. I've given up on the people of Ireland a long time ago. You know? They're you know, it's the young.
I think they call them Kulakene, turned back on the tribe.
Kulakene. I'm trying to figure it out, you know. Well, from what my Irish now I can remember, just like my French I can't. But no, but you see, I think they're afraid really to look at the past. They can only look at the past sneeringly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the past is pointing at them. If you think about this now, and it's
judgment,
no, it's saying you think you're better than us. But I didn't need any of this so-called artisan food. We had it. You know where I'm coming from. I grew my gooseberries out the back there. You know, Paddy had his pigs up the back thing. We used to, and we kill a pig for a couple of families. Do you know where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
If you're telling me you're paying a fortune for what? Do you know? I mean, you go into a butcher
or something.
You go into a butcher down the country, and sure, the pig is the same as you get in the supermarket. They tell you to effectively buy this food. It's what you call that food?
Is it organic? What do you mean?
Yeah. Buy this organic food.
Yeah.
Organic food. Yeah, but we used to eat it. You know? All right, there mightn't have been as many oranges in the shop. Orange was you know. But sweet, you get your vitamins some other way or so. You know? You think how much? My father would laugh at us now, you know that. You're telling me you're buying water. You know, think about it. You're buying water, son, are you? Yeah. Listen, lad, it was a pleasure, and I hope I haven't bored you in any case, right?
No, there was the pleasure was shared by all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pat.
Listen, by the way, get in touch with me because I want to know. Somebody was asking me about this, where it'll be put up and so forth. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All the details will be with you.
No, but give me a ring or so forth like that, lads. Right?
Yeah. All right.
All right. And listen, I'm nearly infamous. If you got that one. Listen, lad, nearly infamous. Nearly famous.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. A little over my head.
I thought, well, like, you know, this is an intellectual, effective station, I hope, lads.
Well, maybe not.
Just not intellectual hosts, that's all.
Yeah.
Listen, lads, it was a pleasure. And listen, give me a buzz and let me know what the story is, please.
Will do.
Take care now.
Slán.
Slán. Bye-bye.
Wow. That's certainly something, right? Something that you can't really deny.
No, it's difficult. It's difficult. That was a difficult. I won't even call it a conversation because I think I was fairly quiet throughout it. So I know previous history of Pat, bar a quick look at an old website. A lot of what he said hit a couple of raw nerves for me. But I think what I'm taking away from it, it's very hard to come away from it without agreeing with a lot that was said. And I know it's quite raw. I think I'll probably start with the initial question that was raised. I think was who's the enemy of the working man, and it's the government. Okay, and some of the bigger issues are around welfare and open borders. And the kind of raw element for me is when you talk about kind of rounding people up and fucking them out of the country. That's where I kind of step back and recoil. But once I take a breath and I look at and I address it, it is an issue. It's undeniable that it's an issue. It can't go unaddressed. I don't know how much of it, if any of it's said in jest to get a reaction, because people don't talk about these things in this country. However, we it's a very dangerous path to walk down to when it's essentially round them up and fuck them out.
Yeah, that we know how that went for Germany in the last century, because ostensibly that's what was happening to that certain group of people. They were being rounded up to be pushed out of Germany, and then it turned into something else over the course of time. So yeah, you know who will organize this thing is the question.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions in there. You know, I think maybe Pat was talking more from a feeling of what, you know, some people in the country would like to see happen, but without, you know, the nitty gritty of like, well, how do we do it?
Yeah, but that would come after a revolution. But it never ends well. But what I have to balance that with is the question of essentially doing nothing. So he did mention that, you know, Ireland is changing beyond recognition. It's not the country it was. Not that I think it ever can be, just given the constant nature of change, you know. But there are real fucking issues. There are real issues about democracy. He asked the question: Is democracy a sham? Maybe it's the least worst system we have, but what we have in no way resembles democracy at the minute. We're essentially slaves at the moment. And so it's kind of it's good. Paddy, he didn't seem very optimistic for the future, and that's what I'm coming away from it as well. Is that it's not an optimistic picture. We talked about timelines. If we do it the way communists have done it in the past, we're looking at a 25-year timeline. He mentioned armed revolution, but didn't seem to think that was a real option either. So essentially, you come away with a sense of kind of hopelessness and defeatism, where there's nothing we can do. So what do we do? Do we just give into it? It seems impossible to infiltrate the structures of government. Again, the time frame to get any sort of serious political party is 40, 50 years. But is that something we have to resign ourselves to? That if we're to do anything, that we may not see the results of it in our own time, but maybe 100 years down the time or down the road, something may change or nothing may change. So I suppose it's the perennial question of what the people do. What do you do? We see at the moment that there's protests that are taking place. So I suppose that's some level of change. Another question around that is, well, what good does that fucking do? Very little, really. but at least there's some expression of dissent. But that's going to be crushed fairly soon. And that's what I see, is just the government are crushing people. And to move on to another topic that Pat did mention was around Christianity. And I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days, really about the morals of people in this country. And more so around a set of morals that revolve around the morals of masters and the morals of servants. And he mentioned it's the Christian morality that's done us in. It's that never-ending cycle of turning the other cheek. And while our masters, they don't have that same morality. For them, it's not a matter of, is this a good thing or an evil thing to do? It's simply, is this a good or a bad thing? And anyone who works off the Christian ethic is essentially handicapped against that other type of morality. So it's not a positive outlook, but I'm glad we had Pat on. I felt uncomfortable through a lot of it. But I'm happy that he was on. He said a lot of things that needed to be said, a lot of things that people won't say. Especially at the time we're living in now, a lot of what he said could get people cancelled off all the platforms on the internet, and beyond that could actually lead to people's arrest merely for stating ideas. Granted, some of them could have terrible consequences, but the times we live in are terrible consequences all around, and it's our governments that are behind them. And governments ideally are supposed to represent the people, but we're fucked. That's what I come away with. I come away with a sense of confusion about what we do, what I do as an individual, what we do as a society, and where people direct their anger and direct their frustrations and direct their energies. If you look at history, he spoke about Africans and foreigners into this country. So I could easily see how people could, okay, well, here's the problem, and direct all their energy and vent all the angst and anger onto those people. And the same rotten system remains in place. And also, if we go down that route, well then, by extension, we reserve the same fate for ourselves, because it could turn on a dime, where people like us, so we're having these discussions now, we're talking about these issues. It's kind of a no-brainer to go, okay, just because we talk about or mention that, we'll be labelled as far right or extremists or subversives. I've been looking at just the protests in Dublin, and people on social media are calling them domestic terrorists, and it's bizarre beyond bizarre. So I don't know how much of it is trolling, but I would imagine that a large part of it is people's actual fucking feelings and thoughts on the matter,
It really seems to be, yeah.
Yeah, and so it could be very easy that we feed into that kind of energy, but we might be the ones who end up on the losing end of such thinking. Whereas, okay, we'll round up the
undesirables.
Yeah, and it's just undesirable thought, and that's what's being put forward in the media at the moment. That even people with these thoughts are dangerous. Dissidents, and we throw into the mix nationalism, and even the word nationalism or republicanism in this country, it just immediately throws up the spectre of the IRA into people's mind. That word was deliberately denigrated in Irish media over the last 50 years. Any mention of dissent was nationalist, Republican, so it automatically brings up the spectre of the IRA. But yeah, I'm in two minds, and I think that kind of expresses how the country is. We're of two minds. Our mind has been split, our personality has been split, so to say, our collective fucking personality. And Pat mentioned he kept calling people paddies, and there is truth in that. To a large extent, we're pretty fucking ignorant bunch of people. Pretty stupid, easily fucking led. Never give issues real thought, and there's a lot of sheepism. We're kind of very easily led by the nose, and that starts at a very young age. So Pat might be right. There may be no hope. Our only hope may be some sort of armed insurrection. How successful that would be, I've no idea.
I think it would end pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And not because we win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you did mention in the interview the previous popular revolutions have the backing of the people. I don't think if a armed revolution was to happen today, the backing of the people wouldn't be there. Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know your feelings on that.
I talk down at protests all the time, but that protest in Dublin, 5,000 people, makes me think. We're in the middle of a lockdown. It's much more severe than last year. There's fucking checkpoints everywhere. Less people are likely to come to a protest all the way in Dublin. Less likely than where they were before. So the question of popular support, I'm a little more optimistic after seeing that. It's one thing a protest does is it gives you a general tally of, how people are thinking about an issue.
Yeah, I would imagine if there was any sort of serious armed revolution beyond the use of fireworks. I'm sorry to laugh. Well, I'm not really, but I watch people fucking again on social media. I know better than this. I shouldn't be anywhere near social media. It's just a fucking cesspool. But it's part of the modern mode of communication. So, yeah, that's the public square at this stage. But people are referring to fireworks as firearms,
You have to consider that this is some kind of fucking elaborate head fuck that's being played on us. If we can get, and I say we as in like just rational, ordinary people who don't want to be in a perpetual lockdown and have our lives destroyed, if we can have 5,000 plus people, and by the way, RTE said 5,000 people.
Oh,
usually that means
50,000 people.
Usually that means, it's more close to 10,000 or 15,000. But Dublin, come on, a little tiny island, 6 million people. And, suddenly, that doesn't mean anything. We had fucking 10,000 a few times. One was against Iraq war.
Yeah, I was there in Dublin for that. So that was hundreds. It was like over 100,000 people at that. Oh,
really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, massive amount of people. And the outcome of that was nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's a good example. Another example is the Rossport 5. And, even before the protest even got together, the day before, the Illuminati rang up the court system and said, here, let those guys go because we're in trouble if it doesn't happen. And that was 10,000 plus people. So if we trust those numbers because they're for lefty causes, then why can't we trust the numbers that we saw last weekend in Dublin? Why do we then go to social media and believe the vocal minority? Because that's what I think is going on here. We have the silent majority, the vocal minority. The silent majority turned up for a protest. The vocal minority started screaming louder and started screaming, far right, conspiracy theorists, you're wrecking my, chances of survival or some shite like that.
Yeah.
It's called being up against the ropes, I think.
Yeah. Well, just out of curiosity, I had a look at the people's accounts. Those kind of people who were most vocal. There was kind of two hashtags. There was scumbag,
Mm.
and was it COVIDiots or
Yeah.
yeah. And so I just went into just a small sample of, I think, somewhere between 10 and 15 different people's accounts, and the majority of them were HSE employees, which I found rather interesting. And so I looked at previous posts and previous twittings or whatever the fuck they're called, Twitter postings, and again it was the same thing. It was, this kind of hero worship, essentially for themselves, saying that we're such an awful time, we're so snowed under, and I wish people could just spend the day, or some of the people at the protest as well should be sentenced to spending time in a COVID ICU ward, which is nice. It's a nice attitude for people who are so fucking caring.
Yeah, to
but
wish
that's the
illness
attitude
on someone. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the danger. I think that's the danger of the kind of round them up and kill them attitude. And I'm not laying that at Pat's feet. But it's a very human tendency, and we're all, sometimes we can be all too quick to dehumanize people. And I was amazed how quickly that happens, especially around social media. Maybe it's the nature of Twitter. I don't know. Maybe it's the algorithm that's feeding me this shit. Maybe it's like you said. Maybe it's just some giant head fuck. Maybe it's all of those things. But it never ceases to amaze me how quick people are to just go, you know what, round these people up and just get rid of them. I don't want to fucking deal with them. And the hero worship for the guards. Oh my god, it makes me puke. It makes me absolutely fucking puke. I read some of the headlines the following day in the newspapers, and it was like 3 guards were injured. Like no mention of the kind of 50 or 60 people that were bet up and down Grafton Street with batons. No clinical dissection of what actually happened. That from what I saw, there's 2 gimps with a firework. It gets launched the guards, and then the guards basically storm down Grafton Street with start baton charging people. And even looking at the front row of the line between the guards and some of the protesters, you can't help but draw the conclusion that half the people on the front line are guards. I've been to a fair few protests. Anyone I've been with never stands at the front of a line and holds their hand up and kind of, it reminded me of a training exercise. And I don't know if I'm being conspiratorial, but that's what it looked like. It looked like a training exercise, and maybe people's memories don't go back, but 2 or 3 years ago, there was a big investment in Garda training for riot control. But it may just be a coincidence, But
wasn't it like last year actually, or it came out last year? This video footage of the Gardaí and the Defence Forces, kind of, what would you call it, wargaming out a protest?
Yeah.
And yeah, actually, you know what? If you actually look at that video, and well, I will include it in the show notes. And if there's a video of this made, I'll fucking edit this in. The Defence Forces playing the rioters were basically acting like that, going, that line, which actually included the guy in the white top that, launched the firework. He was really going at it, saying, "I'll fucking beat you, fucking like wait, how could it's there's something staged about it."
Yeah.
And now that you mention it, now that you bring up to be conspiratorial about it, this isn't conspiratorial, by the way. This is called 4th generation warfare. All right? We all know about it. It's been happening for hundreds of years. And it's suddenly okay to say it's happening when it's, communist fucking uprisings are infiltrated by the government. But when it's, any other situation, oh no, that's a conspiracy theory. Fuck you. But if you want to get conspiratorial, okay, there's 2 segments to what happened. I saw a video. I'll link that as well. there was a guy on the PA system, and he was talking about how Freemasons are, given the government directions, and it was kind of like bordering
Oh
on the
yeah,
bizarre.
yeah. You sent that on to
But
me. Yeah, good.
in this video, it was 2 minutes after. It's like, maybe the Gardaí, they heard their favorite boys club being mentioned, and they thought, well, fuck this. From some reports, at least from Thomas Sheridan, some of those cops actually instigated violence between the crowd, which, these people don't want to be involved in violence. So there was a massive kind of, ceding of ground. So that split the Grafton Street people up from the St. Stephen's Green Shopping Centre people up. And then on the Grafton Street line, you had these hooligans. But as the crowd was partying, you mentioned hands up in the air, right? I'm thinking, oh, geez, what is it that they say when they put up their hands in the air, the Masons? Is there no mercy for this mother's
son? Yeah.
Yeah. So this, hey Masons, I'm just playing
I'm
a
a
game
Mason.
here.
Yeah. Maybe. Fucking knows. I imagine it's a mix of all, like most things, it's a mix of all things, because I had a look at some of the faces in the crowd, and there was a section of what people would class as scumbags. So for the translation of scumbag is somebody who is on the dole, somebody who never works in their life, somebody who is probably involved in petty criminality. That's how they make their living, and would have no issue about stabbing you in the neck for a couple of €100. So there was an element of that in the crowd. And that's where you see online people, scumbags. Oh my God, they're fucking degenerates. They should be rounded up and, put in internment camps. And I heard that mentioned, and that they should be looked at. Are they on the dole? Are they receiving the PUP payment? And the suggestion there as well, then, if they were at the protest and they are on some sort of government subsidy, which a fucking fair chunk of people are at the moment because they're not allowed to work or make a living.
Yeah. 40% or something.
Yeah. And that line of thinking, guess who that comes from? That comes from Fergus Finlay of Barnardo's, and is a board member of the HSE, and ran Mary Robinson's presidential campaign. And so this is a guy who was on 150 grand a year as the head of Barnardo's, taxpayers' money. But he called for investigations into looking at these people to see if they were on some sort of government subsidy. And then he was called out on it, and he tried to slither his way out of it. So that's the kind of thinking of a certain section of Irish society. And it doesn't have to be scumbag. Like for certain sections, scum just means working class, and working class in the sense of not being middle class. And Pat mentioned it about immigration, where most people who come into the country, they're put into kind of poorer areas and working class areas, so the likes of Clondalkin and Balbriggan, that's where the social housing is, so that's where immigrants will go initially, and there isn't anywhere near the same level in middle class and upper middle class neighbourhoods throughout the land. So you go to Blackrock and Foxrock, and it's not an issue because they won't have it. And they're the people who will voice so loudly in favour of all these things, but yet it's a case of NIMBYism. So, not in my backyard, but put them out with the other peasants, and I'm perfectly happy because then I can say, I've done my bit for humanity. But yeah, I found that interesting. I always do. I always find it interesting when there's the call to round them up, because the reverse side of that is, getting rounded up yourself. But it was fun to watch it all play out, and I'm sure there's more to come down the line as everybody gets. All the centres will now be labelled as far-right extremists, which is fun, to say the least.
Just as a little footnote, this guy that launched the fireworks, he is known as a drug dealer by many. So he may not just be scum for scum's sake, showing up at a protest. He may actually be in the employ or be, having something hung over his head, possibly,
Yeah.
hey, look, we're not going to raid you if you just show up at this and here's a firework.
Yeah, that could be a possibility. It also could be a possibility that he just wanted to hurt some fucking guards. Okay, I've seen it 1,000 times. I've seen there was protests up in Tala years ago when I can't remember if it was Joan Burton or Bruton, and there's seems to be not many Burtons and Brutons in Irish government, but it was one of them anyway. She was penned in for a couple of hours, and then there was a bit of a kerfuffle. But a bunch of young guys congregated, aged between kind of 15 and 20, and they just went buck wild. So they were just, throwing bottles of water, bricks, balloons, anything that was at hand. It just takes people over. So we're not going to know with this guy. What I found really amusing was when I went into the garage and I looked at one of the tabloid newspapers, and the headline was Gardaí to use DNA technology to track down firework assailant or something along those lines. And I'm saying, what? What the fuck would they need DNA for? I could find out who the guy was in a matter of 10 minutes, or at least not find out who he was. But
oh my God.
Clear picture of his face. Probably, I didn't bother, but probably if I was to do a Google image search on his face, I would, in a matter of 10 minutes, I would probably have his Facebook account, his Twitter account, possibly a geolocation. And then if he is quote unquote known to the guards, it's not going to take the wonders of fucking DNA technology to track him down. Like if some manhunt is needed to find the guy who fired some fireworks at our hero guard, It's so fucking it's so depressing.
It's a stitch up. This whole thing is a stitch up. If people can't, at least after hearing what we've divulged here, if people can't see or understand that this is just a massive fucking power play, misrepresentations by the media, I don't know, you need your fucking head checked, maybe? I don't know what the fuck is wrong with anyone who would just swallow this stuff, given any kind of fucking thought, One thing I would like to bring up is that something that I have had put in my face when I last year pointed out how it seems that every time the police in America shoot lawfully or unlawfully a scumbag criminal, really, not the most nicest people in the world, then you have loads of fucking riots, whole cities being burnt down. What's put forward to me is that, hey, this just happens when people have legitimate protests. If things get out of hand because you have opportunists who show up. I wonder if we can make the same argument here for what happened in Dublin. That of course you're going to get opportunists who are going to show up and cause trouble.
Yeah, we're dealing with humanity here, which is a fucking mess. So, anything and everything can happen, and it's incredibly naive for people to think that it's not a strategy of the guards to infiltrate protests, and it kind of beggars belief. Maybe it's just a lack of knowledge, or that they've never come across it before. They can't bring themselves to think that governments would do anything nefarious ever, which again is mind-boggling. But it feeds back into Pat's comment on Pattyism. And it's not like they're that kind of people that are mentally retarded. There would be a lot of what you would consider intelligent, bright people, but when it comes to criticism of the state, or maybe they're party loyalists, who fucking knows? But it just seems mentally incapable of thinking that governments can act in such ways, And what happened there is so minor, so fucking minor. Somebody fired a firework at a guard. We're right, it's dangerous, but it's not like
it's not 9/11.
Yeah, It's not like a bomb was planted in the local Garda
This
station.
yeah, this is why I said to you and a few people now that this is Ireland's Mickey Mouse version of the Capitol Hill riot. It's like,
God.
oh my God, they're trying to destroy our democracy when, that's
Yeah.
not what happened at all. It was all blown out of proportion.
Yeah, people are
But yeah,
oblivious. Like they don't see like they don't see like a group of people like in a democracy where you're supposed to be able to protest your government, okay? And I don't know if people know outside of this country. I don't think people know inside this country that this was an unauthorized protest, okay? Just say it again. This was an unauthorized protest. So the protesters didn't get permission from the Garda to have a protest. So that's the general run of how protests work in Ireland. Like you inform them in advance, you give them a plan of your protest so that they can prepare well in advance on how to manage it if something goes wrong. So this is,
the route you're going to take,
yeah,
where you're going to stop, how long you're going to be there for. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking like I don't know. I don't have words. Okay, I don't have fucking words. So that's the first transgression. Is like, how fucking dare you peasants not come to us and inform us and give us the opportunity to deny you your right to an unlawful protest. And these fuckers say this with a straight face, like, and then waffle on about the wonders of modern democracy and how the protesters assaulted democracy. What fucking democracy?
Good question.
Where's the democracy? And Pat raised the question, maybe, what good is fucking democracy?
If this is the pinnacle of it, yeah, like if this is what it eventually becomes, which, let's be honest, that is what it becomes every time. We say, oh, fascism always ends up with, a certain minority being persecuted, and communism always ends up with, these fat cat inner party people while everyone starves in breadlines. But democracy seems to always end up where it's, yeah, you can protest, but you can only protest when and how we tell you can. And we're going to rig your elections, and we're going to use money and power and television to sway votes so that there's no real opportunity for any kind of alternative to rise. Yeah, great. Wonderful.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. It's almost comedic looking at it play out. If it wasn't so serious, it would be fucking hilarious, Yeah, so how we move forward, I don't know. The numbers are stacked against people at this stage, and it's not confined to Ireland. But I can't in myself. I can't accept. I can't be defeatist. I can't say, okay, well, there's no point in doing anything. I just, maybe for my own mental health, maybe I'm deluded. I just can't. I can't accept that. And along with that, I don't really have any answers either. So doubly fucked,
Yeah. Same as our conversation with Pat. There were no answers really, and we still don't have answers because it's like that what was it? Pussifer song, the Humbling River. It'll take us all to figure this out.
Yeah. So, yeah, I suppose in some way that's what we're doing. Trying to get different voices in the hope that somebody makes sense somewhere. Yeah, but I'm glad we had Pat on. I don't think we will find another like him. And I commend him for his honesty, his no holds barred advice and experience. Like I said earlier, it made me uncomfortable. But in other ways, it's refreshing as well. So,
very well put.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. We won't see another like him, honestly, in an Irish context anyway. And if you disagree with anything or everything that Pat said, then at least acknowledge that he has a set of balls on him and he's willing to say what he thinks. This is sorely lacking in Ireland. Because I don't even think that the people who are allowed to speak freely, which is the centrists, or the center left and then the far left, I don't even think they're saying what they think. I think they want to say even more horrible things than what they've said after Saturday's protest, because we're a nation and maybe even a species of pussies. We're lily-livered, we're yellow bellies. And we need to support and at least hear out the people who stand up and say, this is what I think, because I've been through it and this is my perspective.
Yeah, and it seems to go hand in hand. The more civilized we become, the more pussified we become too. And I've noticed that we talked about the hashtag, scumbag, and people's distaste for scumbags. Now, granted, there are people who you could genuinely call scumbags.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence, real evidence of scumbaggery on these people's part. The only thing that would draw people's conclusion to those guys being scumbags is the clothing. And there may be some correlation, okay? So there was a lot of kind of tracksuit bottoms and hoodies and trainers. So that's what people are making the assumption on scumbag, but they don't know anything about that person. Granted, I would doubt they are lawyers or doctors or, people from high-end professions, but that's no qualification of being a good person. That's just the end result of a decent fucking education. And so I think what's at play here on some sort of psychological level is that those people who are so quick to call them scumbags and so quick to bend the knee to the state recognize on some level, or maybe they don't recognize, but what they tend to do is to project all that venom onto those people who even have the bravery just to attend a protest. But it's not even the bravery to attend a protest. It's an actual act of bravery to go to a protest now. Like it's a real fucking act of defiance. Because it's not just the case of, okay, well, I may get ridiculed from society for attending a particular protest. Now there's actual consequences to going to a protest in a democracy. Imagine that. Imagine fucking that. But if it's a Black Lives Matter protest, that's okay. Because that was pre-sanctioned in conjunction with the guards. But if people decide on their own accord that we're unhappy, we're going to bring our protests to the government's attention, because that's supposed to be the way a democracy operates. Your government is supposed to have a good level of fear about it from its citizens. As citizens, we're not supposed to be fucking terrified of our government to the extent where we can't leave our fucking house. We're supposed to have a voice. And the same vitriol is coming from government as well, where they're calling these people scumbags, and they've shown their hand, like. And it's no surprise for anybody to hear a Fine Gael politician talk about working class or poor people in certain tones. The mask slips every now and again. They lose the run of themselves, or they become so fucking hubristic that it's like, oh well, now I can let fucking loose, round up the scum, put them in a fucking grinder, and let's make mincemeat out of them. But yeah, so I think there's a little bit of that at play as well, where internally people are hating themselves because they haven't got the fucking balls to say what's on their actual minds, and then when they see people who do, there's a natural reaction to go, okay, well, I'm going to attack this fucker. I don't want to listen to this person, and I felt it within myself at certain points when Pat was talking. I felt certain triggers in myself. But at that stage, you need to kind of take a breath and ask yourself, well, why am I actually getting upset here, or why is this making me feel uncomfortable? And that's not to say that in some cases you get uncomfortable for valid reasons. But I think anyone who shows the bravery to express their real opinions, be they, however, again, I'll use air quotes, dangerous thoughts, You got to commend them for airing them, no matter how unpopular they may be or how dangerous they may be. But I guarantee you, thoughts unexpressed are far more dangerous than thoughts expressed, because they will come out in other ways and other avenues. So again, I say thank you, Pat. It's an act of bravery to come out and mention the things you did. And anywhere there's honesty of thought, I'll applaud that all day. So, yeah.
Brilliant. I think that is our mission statement part of our mission statement for the Anti-Broadcast.